So I've got to have to say Councillor Jenny Fradgley or Councillor Ian Fradgley when I want to speak. So. Yeah. I think we've still got a problem with the external sound, so I think we might just have to pause for a couple of minutes. If you do apologise for this. As they say, used to sound the TV due to circumstances beyond our control.
Yeah, it's working.
Oh, good. Thank you for that. So normal services quickly resumed to whatever normal service is. Right, item 2, disclosures of interest. Any members have got any declarable, disclosable pecuniary interest? Councillor Passagon, please.
Item 10, the Cabinet meeting. There's a report on the solar panel installations in which Heart of England Community Energy Company is mentioned, and I'm an unpaid director of Heart of England Community Energy.
Will you be staying on the committee for that, or is it?
I haven't got any pecuniary interest in what's being mentioned.
Yeah, so I didn't think it was, but you're erring on the side of caution in disclosing it. Yeah. So no, I think that's really wise, Councillor Pattinson. Any others on this one? No. Item number 3, minutes of previous meetings. We've got the minutes of the meetings held on the 4th of April and the 14th of May. Any comments on those? Are you happy that I can sign those minutes? Yep, brilliant. Thank you for that. Item 4, start time of minutes. Start time of meetings. Consider the start time of meetings for 25-26. Obviously, we've moved to a Wednesday now. But again, I will be guided what the committee, what their preference is. Councillor Rolfe, please.
Yeah, I just think this issue was brought up to try and help people that work full-time come to meetings and hold meetings later in the day. But of course, on a Wednesday, it clashes very much with planning. And there are members of this group that sit on planning, and also this room has to be turned around to make it into a planning group meeting. So I have no strong feelings one way or the other, having discussed that with our group. I am happy to keep it at 10 and that we review it in the future depending on membership, but obviously I'm open to other people to discuss.
Continue at 10 and on a Wednesday. Councillor Littlewood, please.
I'm going to be awkward, the awkward one here. I have a long-standing need for Wednesdays in the morning, and I'd actually prefer it to be in the afternoon. I don't know how, but obviously I'll fit in with the majority of feelings, but Wednesday afternoon, say 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock would be more appropriate from my point of view, but it's a majority.
Councillor Keithley, please. Yeah, we're going to have to do it formally through the mic.
Howard, it was me because I moved to my seat. Just to say, Chair, I do. You know, this issue of timing is an important one, and I accept that some members will find that quite difficult. And we want to try and move the meeting to a time that is convenient for all. However, when I do chair the planning committee, which is a regular meeting, I have a pre-briefing at 5 as well, and often I see the Democratic Services people getting this room ready because there's quite a bit of public participation at planning meetings. So starting the meeting at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, you would need a hard stop, probably around 4 if you wanted to finish the meeting then. So for me, it doesn't suit because I've got to prepare for the planning meetings on Wednesday evenings.
Councillor Johnston, please.
I don't think we've got very much choice but to stick to the morning if we're going to meet on a Wednesday. I'm wondering if consideration could be given to changing the day when we don't have this clash fairly routinely with planning in the evening. It's not for a decision today,
Yeah, no,
but it's for logging for someone to think about in the future.
so just so we're summarising, members are happy for us, for officers to investigate alternative days and times, but if that was not possible, the lesser of all the evils is the Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. Is that a fair summary? So if we task officers, I'll bring in Councillor Hawkins, if we task officers to go away and look at the implications of moving it and the different meetings, etc., because there are obviously sometimes unintended consequences of actions, and then we have a feedback before our next meeting, so then we can have a discussion. Is that fair? Councillor Hawkins, I'll bring you in, please.
Yeah, I just want to say that we must be mindful that the reason that we moved this meeting earlier is that, so that there isn't this mad scramble on a Friday in order to write up the notes for the Cabinet meeting on the Monday. So, you know, what I want to be mindful of is not adding further pressure that we've then got to get the Cabinet programme out so early as to accommodate us. And I do respect the fact that people have got clashes with planning meetings and so forth, but that is up for the group leaders to manage if this meeting is most conducive to happening on a Wednesday. I personally prefer a morning meeting because I think if you go into the afternoons, if there's an extent, we've all been in OSC meetings when they've overrun. I think having a morning meeting actually allows for that to happen, and is much more conducive than feeling that you're watching the clock if you're in an afternoon going into a planning meeting. That said, surely it's not beyond the wit of all of us to actually have the Wednesday meetings. Planning meetings happen on alternate Wednesdays, unless I'm wrong. Then we just have the meetings for Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the Wednesday that they're not happening. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think there are implications for the Cabinet. I think if I think officers are clear what we would like, which is the preferred option of the options so far, but if there are any alternatives, and I think it would be good for officers to explain the consequences of moving meetings. Obviously, if they're closer to the Cabinet meeting, there's this time to do the feedback. And so I think if we look at it properly, rather than just try and debate it now and come up with an ad hoc solution, if we can come up with a range of options and the pros and cons against each option, I think that's fair. I think it's good that we've discussed this. I think we're trying to be mindful of several different masters here, in terms of people working, in terms of reporting back to Cabinet, having time to produce a proper report back to them. So I think officers are aware of this now. So if we can move on, but our action is that officers will look at the different alternatives available and the consequences of those, and then come back, and then the committee will then decide what their preferred option is. I think that's fair, isn't it? I'm not seeing much dissent anyway, so I think we'll move on on that one. Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Johnson, yeah.
Could I just ask, as we've moved the day of the meeting to accommodate the written report to Cabinet, could we understand what the process of the production of that report will be?
Yeah, that's fine. The problem with having a meeting on a Friday, which invariably went on till at least 1 o'clock, bearing in mind we've got the Cabinet meeting on the following Monday at 10 o'clock, it left little time to do it. So Mr. Allison and I usually worked between us. He did the majority of the work. Sometimes I did some as well, depending on what we'd got on. Either the Friday afternoon or over the weekend, to come up with a series of points that have gone through, we'd gone through at the meeting, and then they were reported back on the Monday. But with a bit more time, what we're proposing is that Howard and I agree some actions of the meetings. We will circulate those on the Thursday, hopefully, and have a response back from members of the committee on the Friday. And then once they are agreed, or the majority agree those, I will then present those on the Monday at Cabinet. Happy with that? Good. So can we have a proposal? Councillor Ove, are you proposing that the preferred option is the Wednesday at 10 o'clock, but with the caveat that if officers could look at what the alternatives are to the Wednesday and the implications for other council meetings?
It's difficult to say it's the preferred option because I haven't heard from everyone around this table. But
Your preferred option?
Well, no, my proposal would be that we, at the moment, it stays at 10 until we get a response back from Democratic Services on the preferred time.
Councillor Keithley, please.
Well, I'd be happy to second that. So stay at 10 on a Wednesday until further notice.
And subject to investigation by officers. Right, thank you. I can report back that to Cabinet on Monday. That's our course of action. All those in favour of that? Any against? Any abstentions? No. Sorry? Okay, yeah, brilliant. Right, next item is Chair's Brief. I don't normally have something on this, but I've got two items for this. We've had a member of public didn't intend to come to raise some questions under public participation. Those who've actually read the agenda, we haven't put on the agenda public participation for various different reasons we won't go into, but that will be noted for the next time. What we were going to do was have the public participation during the Chair's Brief. As the person isn't here, we don't need to do that, but we've circulated the questions from the resident, so hopefully you've all read those. And if the committee is minded, we will, to agree, I will pass those on to the Police and Crime Commissioner for him to look at another time, and they will also form part of the minutes as well. Are we happy with that? Councillor Rath, please.
Has Philip not received this question?
No, they've only just come. They came very late. The person who intended to come and speak at the meeting,
Okay.
but then couldn't.
Okay.
Are you happy with that course of action that I suggested?
Oh, sorry, just further on, can we all see the response to that question, please?
Yeah, yeah. We can ask. We can't demand the response, but we can ask that we see the response to those questions.
Okay.
Thank you. And the other item on this is that one of the other downsides, one of the potential downsides of moving the meeting earlier is the agenda. I've not received the agenda for the Cabinet papers. Has everybody else received it?
Yesterday afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I did my research online anyway, so it wasn't too much of a problem. We have got some paper additional copies here if members want them. If they haven't got them, I've made some notes and questions on for item number 10, where we actually look at the Cabinet meeting and the 5 areas we're going to consider. But if members wanted some extra time to formulate any questions, I would be happy to have a small break between item number 9 and item number 10. If members are happy for us to carry on as normal, that's fine. But again, I will be guided by the committee to see if they want a small break to look at the paper versions of the cabinet papers. Any questions, Councillor?
Yeah, I'm a bit perplexed here because as colleagues here have got blue papers attached to their cabinet papers, and yet in OSC we haven't got the blue papers. And this is the South Warwickshire Strategic Assessment for what is it? I'm not even looking at. I'm just looking at the title here.
Safer Warwickshire.
For Safer Warwickshire.
Yeah, I think they were put out just for members' use only. If we won't be discussing the blue papers at this meeting.
I know, but
Yeah.
they're still to be scrutinised, are they not?
Yeah, they will be. So you're saying, Councillor White-Huggins, that the paper version you received didn't have the blue papers?
Has yours got the blue papers? I mean, this is quite the strategic.
Yeah, I think we might need to adjourn because we're potentially talking about something inconfidential. So again, I'm sorry, and I do apologise, Philip. Sorry, I don't know your name again. Mike.
I think we've had blue papers before though, and we go into closed session, don't we, as a group?
Yeah. No, I think the issue is that first of all, the cabinet papers that came out to members of the OSC.
I get them because I'm chair.
Yeah, didn't actually have the blue papers attached. Is that correct? So if we... Yeah, I think we need to perhaps adjourn for 5 minutes. Do we have to clear the... Yes, we do. And no point making up as we go along. You probably think we do anyway, but, you know, we do we're trying to get facts. You know, some people don't want to let facts get in the way of a good argument, but I've never believed in that. So, it has created some slight debate. I didn't think items 4 and items 5 would take so long. But if I've got Mr. Nash, he just wants to explain the situation about the cabinet papers and the blue papers that are attached. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, blue papers do go to members of the Cabinet, and they do go to the observers, and you'll see the members of the Cabinet and the observers on the front sheet of the Cabinet. If they do not go to OSC members who are not part of that, and access to the blue papers can be requested by members, but it's on a need-to-know basis, and it's a senior officer that will make that decision.
Right. Okay, we're all clear now. We're clarifying quite a few things today. Obviously clarifying the start times, clarifying who gets the papers. So 2 benefits of the meeting as well, which I'm sure Cabinet will be pleased to see we've resolved those as well. Right, so before I just again move on, again, does the committee feel they need a break between item 9 and item 10? Or are we happy that after we've done item 9, we go straight into item 10? Happy. Right. Good. Clarity. This is... Probably a bonus that you couldn't hear me. Right, we've got 2 gentlemen from Warwickshire Police. We've got Police and Crime Commissioner Philip Seckham, I'm sure most people know here today. And I've got Chief Superintendent Mike Smith. I better not call him Ben. Your older brother, eh? It's public record now, it's on the agenda. Thank you for coming here today, gentlemen. Apologies for a slightly delayed start. And if you go through your presentation, after I've discussed, we've had quite a few questions that have been circulated to you. And obviously part of the presentation, you sort of like agreed to say, well, this sort of like covers this question or whatever. So we will try and do as many questions, sorry, Mr. Seckham and Mr. Smith will try and cover as many questions as possible through the presentation. But members who've submitted questions, if they haven't felt those questions have been answered fully, they are fully entitled to put a hand up and say, could you clarify this for me, please? So we'll do them on a first come, first served basis, and we'll fire away now. Up to an hour on this, please. I think that will be enough. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Fire away, and thank you for coming once again.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's a pleasure to be back in this room, having been here a number of times over the last 20 years, and always important for someone like myself to be scrutinised by as many different bodies as possible, including Stratford-on-Avon District Council. I haven't got a sort of formal presentation, but I thought I'd just go through 1 or 2 points to try and understand and hopefully answer some of your questions, but would certainly be pleased to answer any sort of follow-up questions you might have. Chief Superintendent Mike Smith is a senior officer in Warwickshire Police. He has the responsibility for our operational control centre, which is at Stuart Ross House in Warwick, and I will defer to him on any detailed questions about 999 and 101 calls, which is a specialised area of our business, albeit a very important area of our business because it tends to be the shop window of Warwickshire Police, where residents can judge efficiencies and others as to how that shop window is working. So really important part of engagement and trust and confidence in the police. So just a few things to start with. My business is, if you like, it's outlined by the Policing Protocol Order, and my job is to scrutinise, support and challenge the overall performance of Warwickshire Police, including against the priorities within the Police and Crime Plan, to hold the Chief Constable to account for the performance of the force's officers and staff, and to maintain an efficient and effective police force for the police area. So those are the three big strategic duties that I have. Just to talk a little bit about the plan, it's divided into a number of pillars. And the first pillar includes strengthening policing. So as, if you like, the budget holder and the one who decides council tax, which is the balance of the money Warwickshire Police gets to run the force, strengthening policing has been a high priority of mine since I was first elected in 2016. Just for your information, this year's budget, gross budget, is about 174 million. We get about half of that from central government grant from the Home Office, and the other half is made up of some income the force receives and the council tax payments. But over the last 20, 30 years, the amount of government grant the central government grant has been reducing, which has meant that to continue to fund an efficient force, we've had to increase the council tax element, which affects all of us and our residents, which is a difficult decision coming to each year as to what the level of that council tax is. But it's worth saying that the government, they talk about funding for policing nationally to include all PCCs going to the maximum amount of council tax, which we've done for the last 3 years. First year I was in, I did a council tax freeze. But for the last 3 years, we've had to go to the maximum just to stand still and indeed make extra savings on top of that, just as on a sort of standstill basis. So Warwickshire Police is made up of about 2,000 people. We're currently about 1,130 officers. When I started, we had 800 officers. So Warwickshire Police has grown more in percentage term than any other police force in the country, over 40%. And it has been one of my main drivers to increase the efficiency is plainly to have more numbers, to get them better equipped, better trained, and better led. So the continuation of increasing our police officers is important, particularly as we have a very high growing population. So I would like, in an ideal world, to at least increase the number of police officers in line with the increase in population of Warwickshire. And I'm absolutely aware that Stratford District is probably above average increase in population in Warwickshire as we go forward. The panel, the Police and Crime Panel, is there to scrutinise me. My job is to scrutinise the force. The Police and Crime Panel is there to scrutinise me and my office and what I'm doing. I think I'll now move on to what was the second question, which was about the 101 service. So 101 and 999 calls, as I said, are extremely important. All forces do not have a good story to tell about 101, particularly over the last few years. But big strides have been made recently. I've certainly made sure that more resource goes into our control room, better technology, and I think a better response and a quicker response to the public. But I'm going to hand over now to Chief Superintendent Smith just to tell us a little bit more about the operation and what improvements have been made in the control room.
Yeah, morning everyone. Thank you, Commissioner. So 101, really it's been a 2-year series of improvements, and we sit here today, I wouldn't say our 101 service is outstanding, but I think it's certainly in line with the national position, and in many ways it's better than the national position, and certainly it's chalk and cheese to where it was 2 years ago. And the data bears that out. So 2 years ago, our average 101 time was frequently pushing up towards 10 minutes. We now answer all calls within 50 seconds on average. We resolve most calls within 2.5 minutes. So the times are much better. Our 999 performance has also improved significantly. 2 years ago, we were answering around about 70 to 75, sometimes pushing up to 80% of 999 calls in 10 seconds. It is consistently over 90% now, up towards 95%. Our 101 abandonment rate, which I think we were asked about specifically, it's a key measure in terms of control room performance. Again, 2 years ago, up to 40% of calls abandoned, so that's where people hang up before we answer the call. With abandonment rates, that's not always a negative. Sometimes people listen to the messages and choose to go online instead. But even so, 40% of people weren't getting through to a call handler. That is now in the region of 15 to 20%. And actually, there's an alternative measure, because we also triage all calls before we put them through to the control room. And it's only 7% if you take the abandonment rate into the first point of contact, into our triage desk. So we're getting significant improvements there as well. In terms of how that compares to the national, so there is some data going out in early June. So nationally, there's a drive to publish national league tables around 101 performance. There's a recognition that perhaps the national data isn't as transparent as it could be. It's quite difficult because forces have different systems, and sometimes you end up comparing apples with pears. But there is a data set going out next month, which I think will be accompanied by some significant messaging from the National Police Chiefs Council. It shows, it's working on median average times, and it shows the national median average time is around about 32 seconds. In Warwickshire, it's about 8 seconds, so we are better in Warwickshire than the national average. Our mean average, I won't make this a maths lesson, but there's different ways of calculating averages. Our mean averages is absolutely in line with the national average. So that kind of shows where we are in terms of the context of broader policing. The improvements we've delivered then, largely based on technology and systems and process changes. So we introduced a number of technological improvements. Firstly, we introduced a callback assist system. So if you phone up now at a time where there is a delay, and unfortunately the nature of policing means at times we can't answer every 101 call straight away. So we offer a callback system where you have the opportunity to hang up, you retain your place in the queue, and the automated system calls you back once you get to the front of the queue, so you can just carry on with your day-to-day life. And we find the satisfaction for members of the public is significantly better, naturally, if you're not having to physically wait on the line while you're in that queue. So that's been very popular. We've introduced a live chat function whereby, as an alternative now, you can contact us via live chat. That isn't available 24/7, but we try and make it available as much as possible. The benefit for us as a force is that a call handler can manage 6 live chats at the same time. So one of the questions is around efficiency and productivity. And this is an example of how we're trying to drive efficiencies across our control room. We continue to develop online reporting. So any crimes can be reported through our online website, Single Online Home. And again, we see a continued increasing take-up of that, which is good. It's not all about numbers in the control room, though. It's also about call quality. And we have the improvements we've made in call quality in terms of the initial threat assessment, the quality of those calls. The improvements have been recognised in our recent HMIC inspection. Again, going back 2 years, there were a number of concerns around perhaps the assessment of risk on those initial calls, call grading, and we know we've made some improvements in that area as well. In terms of the future then, so our 101 I think is better than the national average. I'm not naive, I'm really aware that at times demand outstrips our resources and the 101 queues build up. And that's the same with every public service, isn't it? Whether you're running an ambulance service, a health service, a police service, sometimes demand outstrips resource. And while we've got mechanisms in place to try and surge resources, sometimes the totality of demand across the system just outstrips what we can do, and that's when the calls build up. So next steps for us, so we're looking at introducing some sort of online portal which will allow members of the public to go online and check the progress of their crime reports, etc. And we think that would take out a significant number of calls into the control room. It's not a straightforward technological implementation there, because we have to link it to our records management system, which we're in the process of replacing, and there's significant costs in this, so we're just working through what that would look like. But that will be one of the next steps to try and improve the customer experience once again. So I think I've covered quite a lot of detail there, but happy to take any further questions in due course around our control room performance.
I've got Councillor Ian Fradgley, Councillor Rolfe, then Councillor Keithley.
Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. Is it possible that you could... How many 101 calls do you get to local areas? In my position, it's Trinity Mead. Because I get a lot of things said to me about, you know, this is wrong or that's right or whatever. And my response is, you use 101 for that. But what I don't know is whether they use that.
Yeah, so I
So,
can't...
what I'm saying, have you had any stats that you can show us where you're getting the 101s from?
Yeah, so we could...
For me, particularly Trinity Mead.
I'm sure we could. So the sort of headline numbers at a force level is we get between around about 500 calls a day, 101s on average, and around about 350 to 400 999 calls. So every day in the control room we take about 800 to 900 calls. We know the split of those calls, broadly speaking, is 40% in the north of the county, 40% in Stratford and Warwick district, and 20% in the east. So we can work out in big numbers what the sort of average would be. I'm sure we could break down the detail to specific areas if you wanted that. We could take that away and try and come back with some figures for you.
Thank you. I mean, I don't want you doing it for life, but it, but it would be useful if you could occasionally send me how many 101 calls you've had from Trinity Mead.
I think Councillor Frederick, I think it would probably be easier if you requested the information rather than the police sent it to you. So I'm sure they're about to do that. So, yeah, thank you. Councillor Rolfe, please.
Thank you. So I was scribbling down stats as you were giving them. So you said that 101 responses used to be 10 minutes and now it's down to 50 seconds. But then you also mentioned abandoned calls that were 40% and now 15 to 20%. So if you can just explain to me, so I'm assuming abandoned calls are people that ring 101 and don't get a response. Now, I mean, that happened to me a while ago. And after 20 minutes, I rang 999. And I think that's what, is that what you're saying? So people, it's now 15 to 20% of people not being responded to, abandoned calls. But then you're saying the response is 50 seconds, so I'm confused.
Yeah, so the abandonment rate is exactly as you say. It's the number of people who hang up before we answer the phone. What we struggle, so there's a number of points here. What we struggle to sometimes fully understand in policing, sometimes people abandon for a good reason because they hear our initial message, the automated message, which outlines the other options for them around reporting online or using live chat. So some people will abandon during the first minute for those reasons. So some of the 15%, 15 to 20% will be positive abandonments. But I think it's fair to say a large percentage of those are negative abandonments where people wait online too long as your own experience and you gave up. So that's what we talk about when we mean abandonment rate. When we talk of average wait times, we talk of the time it takes to answer those calls that we do answer. So the 50, I think 52 seconds was the last month's data. So that's the time it takes to get through to the person who answers your call initially. There was a second, I don't want to mislead it.
So that 50 seconds is from after you get all the kind of spiel about
Yes.
da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then when all that finishes, that's 50 seconds before somebody picks up the phone.
Yeah,
Okay.
on average. I want to be really transparent here as well. So we measured two averages in policing in Warwickshire, which is the way national policing is starting to manage it as well. Because lots of forces will have a triage desk, but they won't be able to resolve every call that comes into the organisation. So sometimes we have to transfer you through to someone else who will resolve that call. So we measure the average to get through to the first person you speak to, and we also measure the average to get through to the person who resolves your call. They're two different numbers. The 52 seconds is to get through to the first person you speak to. In many cases, that person will resolve the call. But if we have to transfer you on, the average then becomes around about 2.5 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Keighley, please.
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Chair. Thanks very much, Mike. That was a really good update for us. I was the instigator of the question, and I had the original conversation with Claire Morris in your office. And it's really pleasing to hear that you've made these significant improvements. The question arose from the parish councils, actually, because residents are, as the Commissioner said, it's your shop window. Your response on the telephone is your shop window. So it's really important. I'm interested in two things. First of all, the way in which you publicise these improvements and this data, because I think there was some frustration building up about people not really understanding what you were doing. I did feed this back to the parish councils, actually, your triaging system and the fact that you'd made improvements over the 40% abandon rate. So that was helpful. So how often are you going to let people know how you're doing? Because that's really fundamental. The second question is more to do with the technology. And I know that you said, I declare an interest here because I ran a customer centre and was involved in digital technologies. So I do understand the difficulties that you have resourcing, particularly when you've got waves of calls coming in. What can you do in future to make, say, apps available, except that you've got in the background a records management system that's probably quite complicated and linking to that would be difficult. But how are you going to deliver something that's much easier for people in a mobile world where people are around and about using their phones to be able to report something to you quickly and easily? So there's two things really. It's the communication of the performance data. When Claire responded to me, it was Q2, and that was last December, so it was really old. And the second thing is about the future for the customer experience using digital technology.
Okay, so performance data to start with, I agree that performance reporting perhaps hasn't been as good as it could be in this area, and that's a national issue actually, and there's been a lot of debate around what metrics we should report. You know, there's a phrase around lies and statistics, and it's really true in the world of public contact. I could present any data set today which would tell one story or the opposite. And I think what we tried to get to nationally is a position where every force is reporting 101 data the same way. We've made some real progress in that, and as from next month, there will be nationally available data on police.uk reporting almost live time the performance of your local force. So now we've got that. I think there's a question internally whether we start to share that data in other local channels through our own website. So we'll certainly take that away as to how we update people. The data around 101, it sounds simple, doesn't it, that you've got an average or whatever, but it's really not. You can tell so many different stories with it, and I suppose I just want to put something out there that is really transparent, really clear, that people can understand. I think we've probably got to that point now, so we'll certainly take that away as to how we can share that data more widely with all your constituents. In terms of technology then, so where we want to get to, and policing is starting to get to this position, one or two forces have stepped into this space. It's exactly as you say, it's some sort of app online where you can just go and, I mean, you can report online to us anyway through our single online home. There is an app-based version of that which people can use. What that isn't though, it isn't interactive. So once you've reported it, you can't go back on and see what's happened to your investigation. The old adage that resonates with me is, you know, if you order a parcel from Amazon, you never phone Amazon to see where your parcel is, do you? You just go online and you can... And in theory, at least, policing could take the same approach. It's vastly different. Amazon is very straightforward. You're delivering a parcel. There's probably only 6 things that can happen to that parcel. There are an infinite number of things that could happen with your investigation. So it's more complex, but the basic concept of being able to go online and see where your investigation is, what's happened with the crime you reported to us, I think is sound, and that's where we want to get to. We have meetings with various suppliers actually over the coming months as to what that could look like for Warwickshire. There are a number of technological suppliers in this space who are starting to develop some very good products actually. The challenge we have, and this is why I can't promise timescales at this stage, is because you have to link that into your records management system. We have a records management system where we have millions of records to interface any public-facing portal with that is quite a significant technology piece which will cost quite a significant sum of money. We are in the process of changing that records management system, so there's a timeline piece here around when we do it. But certainly the aspiration is to move as quickly as possible to a position where the public can track their crime and the progress against their crime online. And we think that would take a significant amount of demand out of the control room, which then starts to improve your control room performance further.
Yeah, I'll just follow on with that, and then I'll bring Councillor Waller-Huggins in. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that about sharing data through the partners. Councillor Keith, he's parish champion, chairs parish forums, deals with many parish councils. And if you could give us that information, what you're saying is pretty impressive. We're actually seeing some improvements. And you've got the hard data that can be difficult to argue with. You know, obviously people will sometimes still have their opinions. But I think if you could pass that on, and we can pass that out, well, 2 years ago we were taking 10 minutes, and now we're taking 50 seconds, and really if it has to be passed on, it's like 2.5 minutes sort of thing. So I think that would be good. And the other thing to add on, I think one of the biggest frustrations with members of the public is they report something, and like you say, they don't see the progress on that. So if that online portal is going to be available, again, you're right. I'm sure some people phone 101 to say, "Oh, what's happening about crime reference 123 in Acacia Avenue?" Whereas if they can do that themselves, that would certainly help. So I think that is positive as well. Again, if you need any help with publicising that when that becomes available, I think we as a partner organisation will be happy to do that. Councillor Wally-Huggins, please.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. First of all, to Police and Crime Commissioner Seckham, can you remind us, please, of what the budget is for just running the PCC office and how this has increased over the last, I don't know, 6 years, please?
I haven't got the exact figures in front of me. It's about £1 million. The total spend of the office is about 3.5 million. And 2.5 million goes into our commission services, principally to support victims, and also into our annual grant scheme, which includes funding community safety partnerships, and there's obviously one down here in the south of the county. The actual cost of running the office has gone up marginally. I can't give you the exact figures, but the numbers are not hugely more than when I took over.
So to be clear then, your office is costing the taxpayers £1 million a year, is that correct?
Approximately, yes.
So what savings have you endeavoured to make within that office so that we can get more funding through to actual fighting crime, please?
Well, the duties of my office have gone up. We are taking on more and more responsibility as time progresses. For example, we are dealing with and funding, the funding comes through us for all the Safer Neighbourhood Guarantee, which is the government initiative to get 13,000 more officers across the country. We're also handling the governance and the funding the Resolve money, which is the local hotspot policing, which is a new thing that's come on in the last year. So the number of responsibilities, including finance and liaising with other partners and being proactive in innovating ways of doing things, which I discussed with the Chief Constable, have increased over the last year. But if you want the exact figures, I'm sure my office can supply them. Okay.
I would like the exact figures, and I'm disappointed that you don't have those details with you today. Can I now move on, please, to a direct question regarding policing in Warwickshire? So the 101 abandonment rate was was poor. I think we can say that it was sadly lacking 2 years ago. And I think that I can speak for many residents when they say that as a result of their experiences 2 years ago, anecdotal or at first hand, that people have now stopped using the system, that they're actually, it's not just abandonment, it's an actual, there is simply no point in reporting this incident or this crime because nothing will happen. So it's all very well, officer, coming here and telling us that you're doing much, you feel that you're doing much better with regard to that. But what exactly are we going to do in order to redress that balance and to regain the faith of the public, the taxpayers, etc., that's funding the police force in order to do this? Because from where I'm sitting here, and as a result of the conversations I have with residents, and I live in represent a very rural ward. An incident yesterday, the resident, had vulnerable people, two people visit. One moment, please. The question is then, what are you going to do then to make things better so that people have a better faith that Warwickshire Police are actually capable of policing the whole area? And what are you going to do to say to people that those that feel that actually Warwickshire Police is woefully under-resourced in certain areas? And how do we reassure the public that actually when they make a report of a crime, that it will be properly investigated and will not just rely on the fact of whether a resident has got a Ring doorbell camera or not?
So there's a lot in that question. I think I've talked to some of the improvements we've delivered. We take 900 calls a day. There is always going to be a handful of customers who are disgruntled. You can't run a business that takes 900 contacts with the public and have a 100% satisfaction rate. And no doubt the people who aren't satisfied will come to yourselves. I don't think that represents the general position around people calling 101 or 999. We know there's a lot of satisfied customers. But as I said, I'm not naive. I'm aware that at times wait times are too long, like they are for any public body because of funding constraints. But I've talked about the things we're doing and trying to do to improve the 101 service. You also touched on investigations there, and I think it's important to recognise the progress we've made as a force around investigating crime, because it's really significant, actually. A year ago, we were detecting around about 5, 6, 7% of crime each month. It's now up to 14%. So we detect twice as many crimes as we did a year ago. That's a massive improvement, actually. So when we don't recognise that improvement in terms of the service to the public, I think it's wrong. I think when you're detecting twice as many crimes as a year ago, that has to go down as a significant improvement. You know, we've listened to the public and they want us to get back to basics, doing things right, investigating crime, prioritising those community street level crimes. And the evidence of detection rates alone shows that we are doing that better than we've done for many years, actually.
One more and then I'll move on to Councillor Johnson.
So, gosh, now investigating 14% of crimes compared to 5 to 6% of crimes 1 year ago. So what is your message then as a police force, and this goes to both of you sitting in front of us today, what is your message to the other 86% of the people that have reported crimes perhaps? 86% of crimes, therefore, that are not being investigated. How are you getting that messaging out that the crime that you've experienced, the incident you've experienced, is not going to be investigated? How?
I think it was detection, not investigated. Is that right?
I'm not sure, but it still matters.
Sorry, Mr.
The 86% is still relevant, that they're either not being detected or not investigated. I'd like to know how your messaging around that is going to be for our residents, taxpayers, paying the wages. Thank you.
So to be really clear, 86% is detected. We investigate a much higher percentage of crimes than that. In fact, we investigate all crimes that come in are reviewed. We assess the investigative opportunities, and where we can, we progress them. 86% is solved crimes. Look, I'm not sitting here today and saying 86% is our aspiration in policing. Clearly, we want to detect as many crimes as we can. But I come back to what I said before, that there's a reality. We have a finite budget. We have to prioritise our resources. The demands on policing are greater than ever before. And what I'm trying to show is an improvement here, a direction of travel, and we'll continue to try to improve this. But you know, I think if your expectation is that we suddenly leap to detecting 50% of crimes next month, then clearly that's not achievable with the current resources around policing. But we're improving, and I think that's the message I would give here today with the investment that we've had.
So I think it was quite noticeable that either came out yesterday or today that the National Police Chiefs, or whatever the organisation is, are saying that the government's expectations of increased detection or more responsibilities will need additional funding. I think it's quite ironic that it's come out today, so that's a good point. Yep.
Just make a quick comment, because the question was addressed to me as well. One of my jobs is to make sure, as I said earlier on, that there are adequate resources to investigate crimes, to protect the public, etc. And my job is to make sure that the Chief Constable spreads those resources, which are scarce. We're like every other public body in the country. We are not full of finance. We're having to make significant savings each year. And one of the problems, particularly on investigations, is there is a national shortage of trained detectives and experienced detectives. And we are open for transferees from other forces. We're doing everything we can. We also have two inputs now where you can come in with a degree and sort of fast track into being a detective, although they do need mentoring and training. It's a national shortage of detectives across the country. But I do think that the story that we need to tell is that we are improving. Incidentally, this week, we've just come out as the best on rape figures in the country. Warwickshire Police I think it was detecting more rapes and solving and prosecuting more rapists than any other, percentage-wise, than any other force in the country. That's good news for victims of that sexual crime. So crime is a huge, we haven't talked about cybercrime, and that there's a huge range of criminals out there, and the demand is huge. And a final comment I would make on 101, the last time I went there, there was an incident on the motorway, and the 999 boards were absolutely crammed. So there are going to be delays from time to time. Plainly, we have to prioritise 999 calls above 101, but there are significant improvements in 101, and that's really, I think, what we can ask for at the moment. And I will keep pushing the force to make sure those improvements continue.
Right, Councillor Johnston, please.
I just wanted to follow up on the council tax increase. As I understand it, you're saying that the government grant has been reduced and therefore the cost has been put onto the council taxpayer. Council taxpayers, I think, feel the council tax is increasing without any significant improvement in the service. It's not just you, it's social care as well. I also heard elements of the piece on the Today programme about the interrelationship between the penal system, policing and community sentencing. How do you see the future? Are we going to see this same process continuing of costs being pushed onto the local community from central government? And with increasing demands, should we all get very depressed and not be able to do very much about it?
I can't afford to be too depressed, but there are significant financial challenges. Governments of both colours, I think, are adopting the same process, that there appears to be more being shunted onto local taxpayers than coming out of national government exchequer money. So that does put pressure on us. 80% of running Warwickshire Police is on two legs. It's people. Plainly, policing is very much a people business. You can't do it all by technology. So the national increases that are agreed out of my control for both our officers and staff recently have been above inflation, which I support, but we still have to fund it. There are also significant costs coming in from increments. I think as in local government, you get an incremental increase in salary. At the moment, we have a lot of inexperienced junior officers. I think about 40% of the force has less than 5%, has less than 5 years experience, and there's more increments at the beginning of your career than there are at the end. So there are lots of pressures that are coming onto us. But I think this actually goes back to the national funding formula, and Councillor Jenny Franzi will remember me talking about this before. The national funding formula was based on populations in 2001. And where are we now? 2025. My belief is that the significant challenges that we face in Warwickshire, we have 6 motorways, we have significant rural areas, we also have some areas of deprivation in the old coal mining areas up in the north of the county, and that funding formula, which governs the percentage of all the money we get from the government, is out of date, and I'm part of a campaign to try and get that change to be fairer for Warwickshire. If we just had another £2 or £3 million a year, that would make a huge difference to Warwickshire Police and funding of it. Just on savings I wanted to talk about. We have made savings, quite significant savings, over the last few years. I'll just see if I can find them. But for example, 4 years ago, we made £4 million worth of savings. So that now translates cumulatively to £16 million worth of savings. This current year, I've agreed with the Chief Constable £2.2 million worth of savings, which does not affect any interaction with the public. These are efficiency savings, principally about process, about more technology, about robotics, and other, if you like, savings where we can save on people. 80% of the cost is on people. So looking to the future, there's a comprehensive spending review going on at the moment. I'm part of the APCC, which is the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners. We put in a submission to that not only do we want fairer funding, we want longer term funding. I'd like to see 3-year settlements rather than annual settlements, which we get in just before Christmas, and I have to set the budget in January. So how is that for being able to have an organised, proper budget going forward? So I don't know what the future holds, is my honest opinion. We'll have to wait and see what the current government want to do and how the Home Office is successful on persuading the Treasury that policing needs more money if we want things to improve significantly. But what I do have to do is to make sure that the money we do get is spent wisely, it's value for money for the taxpayer, and that it is fair on the council taxpayer.
Thank you. I'll bring Councillor Fradley in. I'm going to bring speakers who haven't spoken yet, so I think it's fair. And the next one is Councillor Fradley. Then if anybody else who hasn't spoken, well done, Peter. And then I will again go round the people who speak. And then the first one who's spoken first already, well, Councillor Keith and Councillor Rolfe, but I'm trying to go through the people who haven't spoken. So Councillor Rolfe, Fradley, please.
Thank you. To what extent is AI now beginning to sort of impact on policing, saving time, and in what areas will it be using? Will it actually reduce your need for more manpower when it fully comes into play more than it is at the moment?
That's a good question. We've spent significant funds on information technology, which is not only updating the sort of hardware and some of the software programs, but it is looking at what we call robotics, which is AI. I'll give you an example. We process, I think, about 30,000 vetting applications each year. We have a national contractor thing. A lot of that process is now automatic, done by a machine with human oversight, plainly. But that has, although we've got 100 people who work in that department, it would be significantly more without the robotics. I don't know, have you got any other examples in your part of the world, Mike?
Yeah, I think, so robotics and AI. So robotics, I think we've already done quite a lot around robotics, actually. A lot of our volume processes, so when I talk about volume, we get 150 crime reports a day, so often moving data from one system to another, we use robotics to do a lot of that now, so we've moved forward quite a lot. In terms of AI, more advanced AI, so it's starting to get a foothold in policing, that there's lots of ethical questions around this, particularly where you're making decisions around risk and prioritisation. I think we're really comfortable, actually, that the policing can move into this space a lot. I think we've got to bring the public with us, because there'll be natural trust and confidence questions, won't there, if we've got AI making decisions around whether a crime is prioritised or not. So there's lots of debate playing out around it. We've actually are talking to an AI company around some initial options, potentially, where we could look to bring that into some lower risk areas. So absolutely, it's gaining pace quite rapidly, actually. I think how much we can save was the other part of the question. I think that's to be decided, to be honest. It depends how far policing goes into the AI space. And all forces, I think, are just starting to tread carefully into this area at the moment, because there are some risks with it.
Thank you. Councillor Seraphim, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Wally Hoggins said quite a lot that I was going to bring up. Yeah, thank you. Can you give me the figure again of the cost of running your department, please?
I think it's £1 million. He just said it's over £1 million. But Bin's been done. We can ask Mr. Stickham afterwards for the.
Okay.
I think that's
Okay. Yeah.
But
now,
again, I think as a principle, before we go on,
all right.
if
now,
we expect people to answer detailed questions,
yeah.
I think it would be fair and courteous to give them those questions in advance. Because I'm sure Mr. Buckland doesn't know exactly how much it costs running his. So if we could do that, it would make the questions, rather than, I'm going to have to come back later with the details. If you've got a specific question where you need detailed answers to, it would be good to do those in advance. And I know Councillor Keith did that, and we've had some good responses in terms of questions he wanted answers to. So yeah, carry on, Peter. You got a follow-up?
Okay, thank you. Wouldn't it be better if a committee at Warwick County Council ran your type of police crimes commission,
yeah,
and you know, it would save quite a lot of money, and that money could be spent on police officers.
I would just like to respond to that. This is a national, framed under national legislation, PCCs everywhere. Actually, I might be the last PCC in Warwickshire. I know you're going to talk about local government reform after this. We're likely to get a mayor somewhere, from somewhere, doing something, but those mayors will take on policing and fire and rescue responsibilities. So there is, I will probably be the last PCC to be elected in Warwickshire, I would think. The question about running the office, I mean, my predecessor, I was the second PCC in Warwickshire, took over from Warwickshire Police Authority, and the budget has not really differed very much from what it costs to run as a police authority. Before that, it was a watch committee, which was part of the county council. I don't think it would bring any great savings. I have 15 people in my office, a number of policy officers. I have to have some of those. I have to have a monitoring officer. I have to have a 151 officer. I have to have an estates manager. I own all the estate in Warwickshire, including the 2 justice centres, which is a huge amount of estates, big responsibility to maintain and improve those. So I would always argue that I could probably do with more people, but because of the financial constraints, we have slimmed the office down to as much as we possibly can. We're the smallest office in the country with the same duties as every other police force.
Yeah, just following on.
Thank you.
Philip, is your department, your section, subject to inspection by HMRC FRS? Do you suffer that you do have to go through the same process as Warwickshire Police?
I would never say in HMRC you suffer it, but
I do. It's the next portfolio.
It's an independent view, and as a shot in time, as I always say. The Police and Crime Panel is the organisation, the body, which actually is made up of half county councillors, half district and borough councillors, and 2 independents. So they have the duty of holding me and my office to account. I've got a meeting in June, and they ask some very pertinent questions on behalf of residents they represent.
And just one final follow-up, and then I'll bring in Councillor Keithley. On that, is there any benchmarking data provided about Police and Crime Commissioner offices compared to the rest of the country, in terms of cost per 1,000, etc.? Is there any other benchmarking data that you can compare yourself against?
If there is, I haven't seen it, but I can certainly find out and come back to you. Thank you.
I was going to bring Councillor Keithley, but Councillor Passingham hasn't spoken yet, so I'll bring Councillor Passingham in. Thank you.
We're told that drug trafficking is still a big problem. I know there's been raids recently and county lines, gangs have been smashed, but how much of a problem is it, and how many police officers have you got tackling it?
I'll go first. I mean, drugs are a huge problem. They can, drug addiction needs funding, and that certainly leads to acquisitive crime. Organised crime groups are now involved in this space, and that can lead to more violent knife crime and public order, etc. My view is that to combat this drugs problem that we have is a partnership, problem-solving event. It's just as much down to all of us as it is to the police. The reason people come to Warwickshire to sell drugs is because our residents want to buy them. And that's a very sobering thought. So your residents want to buy drugs. They don't come here for fun. They come here for business. And they have sales both in Stratford, in our towns and villages right across Warwickshire. It is a huge problem. It adds to crime, in my view. And we're doing everything we can. There was a question earlier on, wasn't there, about how we interact with neighbouring forces and regional operators. There's a lot of work going on cross-border. Criminals don't respect borders of administrative areas, so we're working very closely with the regional organised crime unit, and a lot of their work is taking out and stopping county lines, for example. It's also trying to find those who are organising, who are in charge of these organised crime groups, and bringing them to justice. It's horrific. And anybody with children is worried about drugs. I'm well aware of that. It's about education. I think parents have a responsibility, and I think as a society, we need to get that message across, that even experimenting with any sort of drug is going on to a dangerous course. Do you want to say a bit about that?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Drugs drive so much criminality across the county. I mean, in terms of the question around how many officers have we got dealing with drugs, I would say drugs is everyone's responsibility in Warwickshire Police. Whether you're a neighbourhood officer dealing with street level drug use and drug supply, or our ROCU, our regional organised crime unit, dealing with the more serious drug importers and distributors. So there's different levels of drug supply, and we've got different resources that target everyone within that sort of chain, from neighbourhood resources up to our regional assets. We have proactive teams in each area. You won't generally see them, they're undercover, but they're actively targeting drug dealers. So yes, it drives a lot of crime. We try and tackle it from lots of different angles. We work with partners to try and tackle drug supply as well, certainly the county lines, the links into vulnerability. So it's a thread that runs through many of the problems that we face. I couldn't put a number on the number of officers dealing with it, because it's not one team, it's everyone really has a responsibility around this.
Councillor Keithley, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I did submit some questions in advance, and one of the questions, number 7, we haven't touched upon yet. It's road safety and speeding traffic. Stratford district is largely rural, and it doesn't matter where you go to talk to parish councils. Almost every rural community feels, I say feels, because a lot of it's perception, but feels a bit blighted by speeding traffic, HGVs and such like. I also gave you a supplementary question following my attending the Marston Sicker Parish Council, where about 30 residents turned up to talk about speeding and community speed watch that they were doing. And it would be wrong for me in this environment today not to ask you about what you were doing to tackle this, because so many people will be listening in and so many people are interested. In Long Marston, there was a sense that we kind of know that the speeding traffic, I was told just the other day in Clifford Chambers, is the same sort of problem, and Claverden as well. But there's a perception there's a lack of enforcement. And without some enforcement or some monitoring, it's proving very difficult for the parish councils to get the county council highways team to talk about reductions in speed limits. It's a sort of bit of a catch-22. Unless you can show there's some problems, then we can't address them through speed limits. And of course that's a problem in itself, because if you've got a lot of people speeding, they won't reduce speed. Sorry, I'm coming on to the question. So could you tell us, please, what you are doing and how local communities can engage with you to get more enforcement?
Okay, I'll start with that one. I chair the Warwickshire Road Safety Partnership, which brings together all those organisations that should and are involved in road safety, including Highways England, the police, the fire and rescue, the ambulance, and others. That has made huge strides in Warwickshire. It is funded by those who have attended a speed awareness course, which is the alternative to taking 3 points and a fine if you're caught speeding. Not everyone, but quite a lot of people opt for that particular way of dealing with what is a crime, speeding. And the surplus from those courses, we run them jointly with Warwickshire County Council very successfully. Both organisations spend the surplus on road safety issues. And that must be right. If somebody is breaking our laws by speeding, they should be the ones to pay to make it safer for the rest of us to travel on the roads. There's quite a lot of education going on. I'm a great believer that there should be more education on the 16 and 17-year-olds before they even get behind a wheel. Plainly, there are those in our communities that speed repeatedly. and they're the ones who need to be enforced. And we need to look at the safety of all road users, and that doesn't just drivers, that is passengers, that is pedestrians, there's people on bicycles, on motorbikes, on horses, or whatever it might be. All users of the road need to understand the road is a very dangerous place. You've probably read locally that my cousin's daughter has been killed on Warwickshire's road in the last 2 years. That has brought home to me how devastating it is on any family to lose, a loved one. And I've become very passionate about this. I've also just been appointed the national lead on road safety. I'm going up for meetings with the Home Office, with the Department for Transport, and I'm going to get the message across that because of some of the laws we have at the moment, Warwickshire roads are less safe than they should be. Going back to Long Marston, I think you have got a speed watch group, which is good. That's the first thing to do. They will make a difference. If they are submitting evidence, which I hope they are, that there is speeding going on, and I know it's a long linear village, and I'm sure people speed through it. If they submit that evidence, they have a much better chance of getting one of our 3 brand new mobile speed vans to come and sit somewhere at a time when the speed watch report is the greatest time of speeding, when there's bigger volume, etc., etc. So speed watches are very much part of our road safety plan. They make a big difference. I've spoken to Councillor Wally Hoggins many times about the speed watch in Brailes, for example, and all of us need to support them. If there is a speeding problem in a village or in a locality, I can assure you volunteers will come forward to be part of a speed watch. The other thing just to mention is Operation Snap. There are those who go around who have a dash cam in the front of their vehicles. There's now evidence that, for example, someone overtakes you on a double white line. There's now leading to prosecutions or going through a red light in front of you or whatever it might be. So we're trying to think of innovative ways to make our roads safer. Finally, it's not just about speeding. We have huge numbers of people still talking on mobile phones, watching films while they are driving. We have people still driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, which is outrageous and unacceptable. And we also have people still driving without seatbelts, particularly little ones in the back of the car. So there's still a lot of education to do for all road users. But those are what we call the fatal 4, and most collisions are linked to at least one or more of those happening. So I'm a great supporter of Speedwatch. I fund all the equipment, all the cameras and everything else, and I'm very happy to do that. And it's one of those things where local communities can help themselves a little bit, as well as working with Warwickshire Police on the enforcement side to make villages like that safer. Don't we want to say anything?
Just to come in on Long Marston, so we have increased the enforcement capability across the force, mobile enforcement. It sounds like people in Long Marston are doing a fantastic job with the community speed watch. I've picked up on the fact that they've asked for further support from the police, and that hasn't materialised, so I'll take that away and have a look. We've got systems and processes in place to analyse each location. We overlay the concerns of residents with the data around killed and serious injury accidents. But clearly there hasn't been a response above and beyond community speed watch to Long Marston yet, so I will take that away and just make sure that's been properly assessed. When it comes to assessing sites, we can't, it might be of interest to the panel, we can't just turn up and put the van there. We need to do some work to make sure the site is safe. We wouldn't put it on when people see a speed camera van, they instantly hit the brakes, don't they? So we have to do some work to make sure the site is suitable. But I think we will have a look at Long Marston and see if we can do more.
And it's usually surprising how many are local people. And usually when the van is put out somewhere, usually on social media, there's a police van on so-and-so, and so it's quite surprising about that. Yeah.
Just if I could just say, though, that the issue I think Long Marston and Welford have is that with all the new developments in Meon Vale, there's an awful lot of traffic travelling through there now. There's a lot more properties there, so there's a big increase in the number of cars, and they're not just the residents.
I think, again, just going back on that specific one, if you potentially liaise with the county council, whoever the new county councillor is, they can request speed monitoring, the lines across, the cables across, so they can, and then you have some evidence to justify that the perception of residents as well. So I think if you can get the evidence as well, I'm sure it will help Mr. Smith and Mr. Seckham's case as well. So I think that's quite good. I've got two more people, and then we'll draw it to the close. So it's Councillor Rolfe, please.
Actually, just to follow up from that, Councillor Keithley, as a county councillor, I'm often approached by people that say there's a real speeding problem in my road, you know, and as a county councillor, I can get the mean speed of every single road in Warwickshire. Now, often the mean speed is what it is. You know, if you're in a 30-mile-an-hour zone, very often the mean speed could be 22 miles an hour. Very often it can be 32 miles an hour. Very rarely is it very much over that, because the mean speed, most people do drive within the speed limit. And so it's only the odd ones that don't. So what makes it difficult for me as a county councillor is, in fact, I'm meeting next week on site with one of your police constables and some residents. And what makes it difficult is that only a few are speeding. So highways won't put in any mitigation to kind of look at it and get to control the speed. I just wanted to bring that in. My actual question is something completely different, which is Stratford Police Station.
Chief, the price of one there, come on.
Sorry. Stratford Police Station. So currently, I believe, Stratford Police Station is open Monday to Friday, 8 o'clock till 5 o'clock, and Saturday and Sunday, 9 till 4. Is that correct? Which is a huge improvement of 2022, when it was open an hour less and not open at the weekend. However, just over the last couple of weeks, I've had two residents contact me who have been to the police station within those hours, well within. One went at lunchtime, maybe that's the problem, and one went to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And but on both occasions, there was nobody at the desk. Now, I'm also hearing, maybe anecdotally, I don't know, but I am hearing from colleagues who are also saying similar things, that they go to the police station and there's nobody there. Can you guarantee that there will always be somebody at the desk between 8 and 5, Monday to Friday, and 9 and 4, Saturday and Sunday?
Okay, just make a quick comment. One thing I didn't mention, which is definitely improvement, which the Warwickshire Police are working with on speeding, is the introduction of, we've got 4 pilot average speed cameras going on. One is on in Stratford District on the A435, is that between Ulster and Studley, I think. Interestingly, very few people are speeding. So average speed cameras do slow people down, and that's the point of any speed measure, is to slow people down. So I'm a great supporter of average speed cameras, and hopefully the County Council and Warwickshire Police can agree further sites for those to come. Police opening hours. When I got this job, Stratford Police Station was closed. The public could not go in there. So, due to probably you, Kate, and others who, on behalf of the residents, were saying this was not acceptable, in a town like Stratford, we have 4 similar opening hours to 3 others, including as well as Stratford. Very few people use them. So it would be a very poor use of resource to have somebody just sitting on the desk the whole time. So those officers that are there, they have other jobs. They could be involved in detecting or solving crimes. They could be doing lots of other things that the police duties have, rather than just sitting waiting for somebody to turn up. It's a bit, the 2 justice centres are 2 of those locations. That's a bit easier. They're really busy. But very, very few people actually go into Stratford Police Station at any time. So I will ask some questions about why 2 of your residents seemed to go and there was nobody there.
There were completely isolated occasions, and probably I haven't been asked about it for like 2 years before that.
Was the door locked, or they got inside, there was just no one at the desk?
It's just no one there, the door was locked.
Yep,
Now,
okay.
also, do you publicise your opening times outside the police station? Because I think we asked you that the last time you came, and I think you said that there was a reason you couldn't.
Well, I've actually spoken to the Chief Constable about this yesterday, that I think we need to tell the public a bit more about the police being open. Obviously, that can be a communications, it could be perhaps a sign outside saying open, which I think might be helpful to residents, but very few people use them. And, you know, we've just got to be proportionate as to how much resource we put into them. I managed to persuade the previous but 2 chief constables ago to do this. And, you know, if we increase resources there, where are we going to reduce them elsewhere under these current conditions?
So, Philip, what you're saying is if somebody did turn up in those times, the door would be unlocked, they could ring a bell, and somebody would come down and see them. Is that correct?
That was the agreement. I will ask some questions. Okay.
Right, I've got Councillor Fradgley, final question.
Thank you, Chair. At the last PCC meeting that I was at when I was a county councillor, I have actually raised a number of times having community speed watch in 20-mile-an-hour zones, which the police are very reluctant to actually allow residents to do it. Now, I've got quite a large 20-mile-an-hour zone limit, or I had in my county district, and I had residents desperate to set up a community watch. And you did say that you would raise this as an issue. Is there any movement in that at all?
I have raised it, and there are some problems about monitoring 20-mile-an-hour as well as 30-mile-an-hour and other speed limits around the county. I think some of it's to do with the equipment. Obviously, it's about resourcing. The evidence is that in a 20-mile-an-hour zone, more people stick to the speed limit than they do in a 30-mile-an-hour, which is good news. So I'm not against 20-mile-an-hour zones in outside schools and in particular areas around the county. But I'm told it is difficult to do. I don't think we've got any comment on that. I've asked the Road Safety Department in Warwickshire Police, is it possible to do that? It is not at the moment. But I would like to think if you have a speed limit, it needs enforcing, plainly.
If you've got people on the street with speed cameras, it just underlines to people going through those areas that it is 20 miles an hour. I think it helps people to keep to the speed limit.
Again, I'm happy to take that one away, really, because I agree. I can't see any reason why we shouldn't be able to do that in theory. Perhaps have a conversation with the road safety unit to see what the blocker is there.
Yeah, and again, I think, it's all down to education as well, because sometimes people go past community speed watches and haven't realised the community speed watches have been there because they haven't been paying attention. So, Councillor Ian Fradgley, you've just sneaked in at the last moment.
Thank you. What has just been said, I on the Banbury Road, I've got a group of people who want to go and, measure the speed, because sometimes it's quite ridiculous the speed they're going on Banbury Road. The only trouble with this group, for this group, is that they have to put a notice further up the road to say there's a speed trap. So they all slow down because they see it, and then when they get to where it's being measured, they're all hunky-dory doing 30 miles an hour. So you never catch anybody.
I'm not sure that's right. But yes, interestingly, I'm trying to promote a scheme in Staffordshire, which is our neighbouring county. There are signs up in villages like Marston Sicker saying you are now entering a speed watch zone. Now, if we could have permanent signs, that would eliminate the problem of temporary signs, alerting people that somebody doing something with a speed gun. It sounds to me, have you got a speed watch team in the Banbury Road? Sounds a good place to have one.
They're residents who volunteered, and they were given training.
So yeah, it sounds like a speed watch team. Have they got all the equipment?
Sorry?
They got equipment, presumably.
They've got all the equipment,
Good.
yes.
Good. Well, if they are reporting at certain times of the
Well,
day.
they can't report because nobody's speeding.
Okay, can we just, yeah, I think...
I think you'll find speed watch teams do pick up people who are speeding. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're at the... I think, obviously, with points to speed watch, it's not only... It's encouraging people to do the speed limit. It's not necessarily catching people. It's passing the message on that speeding is not acceptable, and therefore, if it's serving that purpose, it's doesn't matter if we've not caught anybody because people are going through that. But, we could be here all down that. Yeah, I'll just round up a couple of things for it, if you don't mind. Again, any benchmarking, any reports back from HMI, CFRS on the 101 system, 101 process and how any improvements on that would probably be good if we could have some details about that. Any innovative practices you're bringing in that perhaps other forces might be adopting and vice versa, so I think that would be good. Again, details of cause volumes. And again, I think the other thing as well is what steps, again, if you could give this afterwards, what steps you're taking to try and reduce nuisance and prank calls, because obviously invariably there are some. I'm not including silent calls in that because there might be genuine reasons for the silent calls and that. So again, if somebody's answering a prank call or a call that's inappropriate, that person then can't answer another call that might be needing a significant response. So again, just some details, even after post this meeting of what's going on to do those again. So that would be helpful. And finally, just thank you very much for coming to be grilled by this esteemed band of councillors here. And thank you for, again, providing in-depth information. I think it's always helped that most of the information, most of the questions you've been asked, that you've received the details, so you've been able to then do the research and have the evidence rather than, I'll come back later. Again, lots of details will be in the minutes, I can assure you that. And the only other thing is that if you do need for us to pass on information to our communities, such as the speed watches, such as through Councillor Keith's parish forum and parish champion role, and what feedback there is, and I think finally I think the online portal will be good. I think that would help. But again, if that needs to be advertised, and I'm sure we can put this in various different magazines that we put out as well. So thank you very much, and have a safe journey back, and no speeding, please. Right, and I'll just we'll have a break for 5 minutes whilst we clear the room, and we'll be back at just before 10 to 12. Thank you. Right. Thank you. Welcome back after our short break. Next item, we've got the starter. We've got Mr. Buckland, who's going to give us an update on devolution and local government reorganisation, not reform. Hey, Mr. Buckland.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, as with before, I've done some bullet point notes, so I'll go through them now, and then I'll leave a copy for everybody afterwards, if that's okay. So this is an update since I spoke last on the 4th of April, and I wish to be able to report more progress, but we'll come on to that in a second. So, just as a recap, we received a letter on the 5th of February from the Minister launching local government reorganisation and requiring us to submit what was called interim plans by the 21st of March. That gave us 44 days to do that, but we did that. The districts and the boroughs made a joint submission, and the County Council made a submission also. The district and boroughs submission identified two potential options for local government reorganisation, which was a single unitary Warwickshire and a two unitary solution. It didn't express a preference at that stage. The County Council identified the two same options, but did express a preference for a single unitary Warwickshire. There were also three options identified for strategic authorities, because this is all about devolution at the end of the day. And the three options were the West Midlands Combined Authority for Warwickshire as a whole or in two parts, a standalone Warwickshire, which is being termed the Cumbria model, because that's what's being used in Cumbria at the moment, is a Cumbria Strategic Authority, or the possibility where, if it was a north and south, that the north went towards Staffordshire, Leicestershire, and the south went towards Worcestershire, Gloucestershire, that kind of argument. So that's where we were on the 21st of March. We had expected, because MHCLG told us, that we would receive feedback on our interim plans the week commencing the 28th of April. And the feedback would come as a single piece of feedback, which would cover in the county councils and the districts. Latest update on that was a message I received yesterday to tell us that we won't now get our feedback until the 3rd of June, but we are promised the feedback on the 3rd of June. I am an accountant, so I've worked out they've had our homework for 74 days now, and they only gave us 44 days to do the homework in the first place, which I have written to the Director General with responsibility for this, expressing my disappointment that it's taken so long to get the feedback on such a really important issue.
You did clarify it's the 3rd of June 2025 you'll get the information.
Yeah, well, yeah, 3rd of June 2025. We're not alone, and please don't have a go at me, but they've been doing it in alphabetical order, and Worcestershire are behind us, so that's one good thing. When I also spoke on the 4th of April, I repeated that government had made available £7.6 million worth of capacity funding. They made that announcement on the 28th of March. They still haven't told us how much of that money will be given to each local authority to help with the preparation of formal submissions. As I spoke last time, that would be, if it was divided equally, around £380,000 for each of the 21 county council areas which are going through local government reorganisation, but we haven't been told yet how much we will get. A bit galling for Surrey, because Surrey have already had to submit their final plans without any announcement from that. I mentioned last time that Deloitte were commissioned by the council, and that's a joint commission with all the district and boroughs, to help the council identify its preferred position on local government reorganisation. We are in the process of finalising that report now. It should be finalised early next week. Now that's going to be really important, because the council will be asked at its cabinet meeting on the 7th of July and the council meeting on the 14th of July to identify what Stratford-on-Avon District Council's preferred position is for local government reorganisation, and that position will be used in consultation. Consultation will be undertaken over the summer, and it will run for at least 8 weeks. That will include the public consultation, town and parish consultation, and then other designated public sector organisations as per the guidance. So that will be the Integrated Care Board, the Fire, and the Police and Crime Commissioner will be formally consulted. I will say the Integrated Care Board at the moment is also going through a reorganisation of proposals. We currently have the Coventry and Warwickshire ICB. There has been an announcement by government that government want to reduce the running costs of ICBs by 50%, and therefore the expectation is that ICBs will merge. That we will have to take into account when we're looking at future strategic authorities, because we were asked in the initial invitation letter to have regard for Integrated Care Board boundaries, but they are, the goalposts are moving whilst we're playing the game at the moment. We will engage with businesses and our 2 MPs. A specific consultee will be the Mayor of the West Midlands Combined Authority, and just to let you know, a letter has been drafted which will be sent to the Combined Authority, formally asking it to identify what its position would be in regard to the idea of Warwickshire, either as a single unitary or 2 unitaries joining the West Midlands Combined Authority. I think, as I've mentioned previously, very shortly after the announcement of the publication of the white paper, the Mayor is reported to have said he didn't see Warwickshire within the Combined Authority. We just need to flush that out for sure and identify that, because that is crucial. As I mentioned earlier, the strategic authority options, if you don't have the strategic authority option of joining the Combined Authority, there's really only 2 left, which would be the single standalone Warwickshire or the north and south effectively going slightly separate ways. So, with the idea of undertaking the council identifies its preferred position, we consult upon that, and then we come back in November. I have asked MHCLG whether there's going to be a delay now to the submission dates, because there has been, well, let's face it, a month's delay to our feedback. I haven't had a response to that other than they're thinking about it. But we're going to work on the basis still that the submission date for us will be the 28th of November 2025. So post the consultation, OSC will consider the position on the 5th of November, a special council, a cabinet meeting on the 17th of November, and then council on the 17th of November to agree at that point the final position from Stratford-on-Avon District Council in relation to local government reorganisation, and to the submission document that we actually then have to put into government. We have got a devolution and local government working group that was meeting before the elections. We will be reconvening that, and provisionally, and all members of that group will be emailed today, we are looking at a meeting on the 4th of June, and that is provisional, to look at the feedback from MHCLG. Of course, if it's further delayed, we won't be meeting on the 4th of June. As I mentioned earlier, we're expecting the feedback now on the 3rd. And then another provisional meeting of the 11th of June to look at the Deloitte report as a group. Before then, that's used as evidence to support the Cabinet report, which is coming forward on the 7th of July. I suppose the only other point of note will be that we have between those 2 dates, the next meeting of the Parish Forum, where we will be giving an update at the Parish Forum in relation to the progress on LGR. And Chair, I've put all that out in a note that I can circulate, but if there's any questions, happy to take them.
Councillor Rice, please.
Thank you, David. When you say, in your brief report, when you say we, are you talking we Stratford or we 5 district and borough councils?
Stratford. We as Stratford District Council, the indication is that the other district and boroughs will also be looking for a preferred position in July, but we're definitely taking a report, and there'll be the forward plan, which will be published on Friday, will include a report to the Cabinet and Council in July. Can I just expand upon that? The expectation would be, though, the consultation will be a joint consultation with the district and boroughs.
Super. Yeah, just going back to the alleged 4th of June response back from the government. Can we ask if they will provide the details of the 7.6 million by then, because they've had an extra time to do so, and Surrey might not need theirs because they've already done their bit already. Do you think they will be able to clarify the amount we're going to get? Because the sooner we get the money, the more certainty is how we can use that money.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Sorry, I should have mentioned, and it is on the note, we are expecting that announcement also on the 3rd of June about how they're going to allocate the 7.6 million of capacity funding. You're an accountant, I'm an accountant. I don't understand why 7.6 million divided by 21 has taken so long.
I think they'd run out hands and toes. And that we're working on the, I think I'm being split alphabetically. I think then they're going to go on to numerical afterwards, I think so.
Derbyshire County Council have had their feedback quite early in the process.
No, it is disappointing. And again, I think if members note the extraordinary meeting on the OSC on Wednesday, the 5th of November 2025. So, yeah. Councillor Keithley, please.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, David, you just mentioned that Derbyshire had theirs. And of course, that, in my mind, is triggering a question about whether or not there's any feedback on the size and this threshold of £500,000, whether or not if you're starting to get some feel from the feedback to the other authorities as to whether or not there's any relaxation of the boundary there.
So as we know, the guidance identified a minimum size of £500,000 unless there's exceptional circumstances. So the Derbyshire's submission does talk about options below £500,000. The expectation, and I believe, I don't want to be quoted on this, it's a Treasury type issue, why they are looking for bigger, being more efficient. And yes, one of the criteria, of the 6 criteria that we need to respond to, one of them is around the costs, and a single unitary Warwickshire will be more cost effective than a 2 unitary Warwickshire. So the government, we were never going to have a no at this point. It's only feedback, so they're not discounting any of the solutions. We do know from the Surrey feedback that there wasn't a single Surrey unitary proposal coming forward from either the county or the districts in Surrey, but they were asked to do that by government as part of the process. So it does look that bigger is considered to be better by government, but of course that's only one of the 6 criteria about contact and the communities and how we're going to serve communities, are some of the other criteria. So they're not ruling them out, but there hasn't been a massive softening on the position about the £500,000.
Any other questions? That's good. Just one point, members, if we do have an urgent call or have to make a call, if you could just move out the meeting. Obviously, we are being watched, so if members do need to take an urgent call, I prefer if you went outside the meeting rather than picked up with your phone, because it's not a good impression of people are watching. And again, I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I could probably be equally as guilty as that. So if that would be good. I know we've got thousands of people watching online, and one of those might put that up as well. So if that was, sorry, I know. We've got the. So yeah, no, that will be good, and there's nothing worse than being interrupted by the tunes to The Great Escape. So yeah, thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Buckland. And so the news is we'll hear something, hopefully by the 3rd of June, when a special meeting on the 4th. Thank you. Right, next item is Housing Associations Working Group. We need to agree the membership of the group for the 25-26 municipal year. I think it's been working really well, cross-party, and bringing people in on one-offs or occasionally asking them for information. So I do think this working group has particular merit. So, Councillor Alf, please.
Yeah, I still think that we should open this group up to the rest of the council. I really do. I think it's very kind of colloquial that we're having here, and it's all a bit closed in. I think it should be opened up to other councillors. I really do.
Can you give your reasons why you want to do that, please?
Because other councillors want to have their say.
Well, we're not saying they can't. Obviously, it is a offshoot task and finish group of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and obviously members have put themselves forward to be on the Scrutiny Committee.
But all task and finish groups should be opened up to anybody that wishes to join, that they have a wish to join, in my opinion. And I think in the opinion of quite a few people around this table.
I would, my opinion on this, and I might be in a minority of one here, is that I still think the task and finish group should be made up of members of this group. If there are any vacancies after that, I would welcome them being filled by people outside the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, but I might be in a minority of one, and the committee might vote to have the task and finish group filled completely by non-members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So it would just be interesting to see what the terms of reference are. Councillor Wild-Huggins, then Councillor Frashley.
Councillor Frashley was first, sorry. Don't want to upset protocol.
I really believe that task and finish groups should be open to the whole council, because there are people on the council who've got specialist knowledge or specialist interest or specialist experience that they could bring to these task and finish groups, which they can't if they're actually restricted to just overview and scrutiny members.
Councillor Wild-Huggins, please.
Yes, thank you. I think that Councillor Keithley has given us a masterclass today with regard to the questions that he organised for the PCC, that he, parish councillors fed into what he wanted to raise. Part of, we are nominated, or you are nominated, by your political party to represent them on this group, and it is therefore your role, for whatever party you represent, to garner the information and to be the conduit for the questions and the information for them on that committee. So we have been very kind, you and I, Kate, during our chairmanship of that, and people have come in and spoken to us about it, and I think it's worked quite successfully, really, that they've been given that opportunity to come in and talk. It is not a closed shop at all, and I think that councillors that have wanted to come and speak to us about matters have been welcome to do so. But again, I reiterate the fact that councillors of political persuasion should be using whoever is representing them on the subgroup to ask the questions and to represent them.
Right, thank you. I was just checking something with Mr. Nash. Yes. Yes, we would have to change the terms of reference. The membership of the group to be made up of not less than 5 members drawn from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and should reflect the cross-party nature of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Members of the group shall be permitted to send a substitute OSC member to meetings of the group. And Cabinet and other non-OSC members may be invited to meetings. The group should also be entitled to recommend to Council via the OSC the appointment of persons not being councillors as non-voting co-optees. So,
Chair, could we know what you're quoting from? Is that the Council's constitution?
The terms of reference to task and finish group of housing associations. I could have been flippant and I could have said Mace's computer, but obviously wouldn't do that. Mr. Perks, you want to come in, please?
Yeah, just to make sure everybody knows what's going on. When we established the task and finish group, as I recall, we had a debate about the membership at the time, in terms of reference for the group were agreed. At that time, the committee sort of felt the terms of reference that the chairman's just read out were appropriate, that it should be formed primarily from members of the OSC group, but where there was expertise from sort of other councils, they could be invited to come in, and that was even extended to people sort of outside of the elected sort of contingent here, that if they wanted expertise in, but it should be sort of based within the OSC, and it should reflect the political balance sort of broadly. It isn't a political balance calculation type situation, but that it should be a cross-party group, not a single party. That's what you agreed last time. The terms of reference are driven from here, so you're at liberty to change them. We can vary those. I don't see that's a problem, because it's a task and finish group from here, so the decision sits here. So just in terms of background, I thought that might be helpful.
That wasn't your question, was it, Councillor Johnson?
It's relevant to it.
Well, go on, we'll do you. I'll bring you in front of Councillor Littlewood, because it's relevant to it, so we might as well carry on.
You expressed a view that the task and finish group should probably be composed of members of OSC a few moments ago. What I wasn't sure was whether you were expressing a personal opinion or whether you were quoting some rule book somewhere.
No, it was a personal
of
opinion.
which we were not necessarily party to.
I think I did say, in my view, my opinion is that it should be that, but then Mr Nash came up with that. So that happened to coincide coincidentally, but it was my personal opinion. Do you want to follow up on that, Councillor Johnson? No? Okay. Yes, no?
No follow-up to that.
Right, I'll bring Councillor Littlewood then. If you want to come back in a minute, once you've thought of the question, I'll bring Councillor Littlewood in.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit confused by this conversation, or debate, I should say. I mean, if we're going to make it completely open, then it should be full council, and we debate it, and we'll get no work done. This is a task and finish group. This is has specific objectives in mind. It has worked, as I understand it, and I've been on it right from the beginning. It has worked very well cross-party. We've all been very practical and proactive. You get too many people in, then you start getting problems. That the size should be relatively small in order to complete the tasks in hand. Now, as I did co-chair the working group on the public houses, and Councillor Coles was invited to come in there, and she expressed to me quite rightly that yes, you did. Well, okay. I think I must have been confused. I was chairing at the time.
Councillor with a special interest in public houses.
Whichever, it was a task and finish working group, and the point was that she came in and expressed opinions quite rightly, and that was absolutely fine. It works that way. We don't need to have everybody coming in on a mass scale. I mean, if we thank you, I'll finish. If we have people who have particular questions, they can address the chair of the working group with those questions, and if necessary, that person can be invited in. That keeps it in a manageable form and in a workmanlike way. That's my opinion, for what it's worth. I do not see how extending it to everybody is going to make any difference. It's just going to cause more chaos in terms of achieving objectives, in my opinion.
Councillor Coles, would you like to? Do you want to correct? Do you want to correct the fact that you weren't invited to that one?
Thank you. Just to set the record straight, it wasn't public houses. And as I say, I'm a notorious gate party crasher, but that one I missed. The other one was the Housing Association one. I wasn't ever actually invited by the committee. I did do my party crashing act and went to one of the meetings, but I had not and was not invited to actually contribute to any of those meetings of the Housing Association Task and Finish group. Thank you.
If I could just go back on that, thank you for that and the clarification. And I wasn't trying to suggest one way or another. I was using it as an example of how that works and the system works.
That's only it didn't. So okay. I think, you know, it would bear, in order to ensure that we do get the contributions we need, I think
Coles, I'm
we
sorry,
would make sure.
I can't ask you on your opinion. We came up for a factual point of it, you say. But I think in the terms of reference, I know Mace's machine has just crashed, that it did say other members of OSC and the Cabinet could be invited to the meeting. So I think we'll just clarify that. Councillor Rolfe, please.
So what I'm trying to say here is that I think the terms of reference should change. I'm not saying that we have 5 members in this committee and add other members. I am saying that each group leader should go to their group and say, in our case, if it's 3 members, which 3 members would like to join this group? It doesn't have to come from overview and scrutiny. And that's what I think is more fair, okay? We all have a lot to do, and there are people, as Councillor Jelly Fradgley said, there are people with a specific interest. So in my opinion, we should change the terms of reference to that of this group will consist of 5 members, 3 Lib Dems, 1 Conservative, 1 whatever, I don't know. We work out that system, and each group leader asks their group who would like to join that group. It may be that it's exactly the same people as is on this group anyway that join. I'm just saying we should open it up to others within the group and therefore change the terms of reference. And that can be done through the leader of the council, I believe.
Yeah, I'll say we can vote to decide if you want to vote to change the terms of reference to feed in, just to make sure this will feed in. I will bring in Councillor Huggins in a second, that the task and finish group will feed into OSC. It won't replace OSC. Because, yeah, I've just got some slight concerns about that. But again, I think we can, I don't know what's in the Constitution. Mr. Perkson, please.
I think we're in danger if we're not careful of this moving away from the OSC. If it's an OSC task and finish group, which can be determined here, because that's within your gift, it's got to be rooted in the OSC. So under that scenario that Councillor Rolfe just described, my fear is that you could end up with 5 people on it, none of whom were in the OSC. So I think you'd have to at least say that the chairman was from the OSC, because it's got to be rooted. If you're asking for a committee to be established as a cabinet subcommittee, for example, which would be within the leader's gift, that's a slightly different thing, but we'd have to take the leader's view on whether that's something that she wanted to do. And I've not discussed that with her because it's only come up today. So here this morning, if we want to keep it rooted in the OSC, you're at liberty to change the terms of reference. But if we wanted it sort of more widely, and it'd be something including the leader's statement, we probably need to take that away and sort of look at political balances, and that there will be other implications to that, which I'm very happy to do, but it's just getting some clarity.
In which case, for the moment, can we leave it for the leader to discuss with her group the way forward that she'd like, or this group would like?
Sorry, this is not to do with the leader. This is OSC now. We're not talking about... Oh, sorry, Councillor Jude, I'm trying not to be disparaging there, so I do apologise if that came off slightly in that way. But we need to, we're discussing about the terms of reference of OSC. If we need to involve the leader, that would be the leaders group. It's not an OSC group, from what I'm being told. I'm told I'm right on 2 occasions from, so which is good. So I think we've got to be careful what we're doing here. Personally, my personal opinion, just so I'm clear, Councillor Johnson, is that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Because I think what we've done with the task and finish groups have been pretty good, especially on the housing associations. But yeah, I think we've got to, I think whether we can take this out, because we're going around in circles, I think we need to be clear what we're going to do, and we have this on the first item on the next agenda of a way we're going to go forward, because I think we're straying from an OSC group to a leaders group, which is nothing to, then wouldn't be feeding into OSC. It was an OSC task and finish group. Councillor Huggins, please.
I thought we got quite a good response there when we looked at the terms of reference, because actually within that terms of reference it does say that any councillor is invited to attend and to contribute if needs be. I think that perhaps what we could do is perhaps more widely circulate the papers, but I think we need to be really careful here, because there's been several meetings that have been unable to go ahead due to councillors being unable to attend the meetings. I think there's 3 postponements of that meeting. And I think we need to be really careful here that we don't end up in a situation where we could be perceived by the public to be actually sabotaging the excellent and outstanding work that's already been done via this working party. And I think that we need to really think about this, because the terms of reference, you know, why are we reinventing the wheel here? The terms of reference specify that any other councillors can come in and contribute and raise concerns that we can deal with. It's all part of a good set of agenda items, you know, any matters being raised by other councillors. It's not, we need to press on and get the meetings moving forward. Because, you know, stopping 3 meetings from going ahead for whatever reason, I found quite disingenuous and quite alarming, to be honest. Thank you.
Councillor Jenny Fraser, then Councillor Rice.
I think it's a matter of communication. If councillors who've got particular interests actually know about the task and finish group and what its remit is well in advance, that they can then apply to actually take their views to that meeting. But I must say there have been a couple of task and finish groups which perhaps it's my fault, I wasn't aware of as I should have been, and I missed an opportunity to have to put a point of view.
Perhaps it was your colleagues on the task and finish group who hadn't told. Councillor Rice, please.
That's not necessarily happens.
Excuse me. May I make a proposal that the terms of reference of the Housing Association's working group are changed such that only the chair needs to be a former member of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee?
Yeah, have we got a seconder of that proposal? Councillor Johnston? Any other proposals? The proposal that the terms of reference for the Overview and Scrutiny Task and Finish working groups only need to have contain 1 person from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee who would chair that meeting.
Then it doesn't become an Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I mean, it's just a nonsense. I'm sorry, but it's not an Overview and Scrutiny Committee. If you've only got the chair from that, it ceases to be an Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It ceases to be an Overview and Scrutiny Committee subgroup, working party, if you've only got 1 person from it representing it. This is making a nonsense, and as I said before, this is sabotaging the work, the excellent work that this group has done.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I think that, as Mr. Nash is saying, OSC is a critical friend to Cabinet, and we do value, and I think Cabinet on the whole may not always 100% agree, but I think it values the contributions that OSC do make. So I am, again, my personal opinion might be a minority of 1. I'm concerned the way this is going. You know, it's an OSC meeting. Councillor Keith, you indicated.
Well, only that I share your concerns, to be honest. I need clarification from the officers, I think. Is this task and finish group a subcommittee, effectively, of OSC, or is it just a wider working group?
Mr. Perks, please.
As things stand, it's a subcommittee of the OSC. It was
Thank you.
established by the...
Thank you. In which case, it should be made up of members of OSC, Deputy Chief Executive. Would that be right?
Well, as I say, it needs to be rooted in the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, so I think you definitely need at least somebody in there. The proposal that we have had would have the chairmanship of it in there, so it does... it's not something I've given a lot of thought to, because I wasn't expecting this to come up today. It would still be led by the OSC, but it does seem to change the emphasis of the group if you potentially only had 1 OSC member on there. And at the moment, your terms of reference allow you to invite people in. Now, it's really a matter for you to discuss. I think you could lawfully do either.
Councillor Rice, please.
Yeah, I have made a proposal that's been seconded, so I think we should perhaps go to a vote. But before that, I would just like to say we have Overview Scrutiny Committee. We are putting the emphasis on the committee. I think we should be putting the emphasis on the overview and scrutiny.
But if that's the case then, why do we have an overview and scrutiny committee separately if you're having a task and finish group that's made up of members who are not on the overview and scrutiny committee and haven't had the training on overview and scrutiny committee areas?
There is a risk. That's a really valid point. Yeah, I think the chairman raises a valid point. Sorry, I'm thinking slightly on my feet here. The purpose of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee is to give some sort of independent scrutiny of the work of Cabinet, and you need to maintain an independence of that. Potentially, and this is speculating, the group leaders could, well, it could become populated by Cabinet people who wouldn't be on scrutiny, so then you can't scrutinise yourself. So it loses an element of independence by going outside the scrutiny committee, but it gains an element of sort of expertise potentially from other members. I think that's the balance you need to debate.
Councillor Jenny Fraser, please.
I started off very much wanting to open this out, having heard the terms of reference. There is a capacity in there to open it out. And I think that capacity needs to be looked at more carefully by groups to make sure that they actually make sure that people within their groups, whichever group it is, attend those meetings if they have interest.
We've had a proposal and a seconder to go to the vote. Councillor Rolfe, do you want to stay in the meeting for the vote or not? We've had a proposal and a seconder from Councillor Rice to change the terms of reference for the overview and scrutiny task and finish working groups, that only the chair needs to come from OSC. Have I summarised that correctly, Councillor Rice?
No, because I made it specific to the Housing Associations working group, but you've just opened it up to all working groups, I think.
Well, yeah, that wasn't particularly clear, so, yeah.
Well, surely you set terms of reference for each working group in advance, so this could be a specific one-off.
Well, you have to approve the terms of reference.
Yeah, no, it is really, this is purely...
Yeah.
The debate is purely relating to the Housing Association's task and finish groups. Other task and finish groups would have their own terms of reference, so it isn't a blanket thing. So, yeah, thank you for the clarity.
Yeah. But usually they follow a similar template. Right, so we've had the proposal, it's been clarified, seconded by Councillor Johnston. Any other changes? Are you happy with that clarification? Right, so all those in favour? That falls. So the next option is the existing terms of reference are pertinent. We'll carry on.
We need to propose that.
So I will propose that the existing terms of reference are extant.
Can you just clarify for everybody's benefit exactly what those terms of reference are in respect of the numbers of people that should come from here and the ability of that task and finish group to call in other expertise from other members should they so choose? Could you just make that clear so we know exactly what this proposal is?
Yeah, I will.
Well, not unless we vote to change them. So we don't need to vote to change them. We just need to work out the membership. Yes. So the existing terms of reference stand?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
So all we know so we don't need to vote on that. All we need to know is vote on who wants to be on the Housing Association working group. So
we just want to agree the membership.
We just need to agree the membership. The existing terms of reference are extant, so they still stand.
Chair, as a substitute, can I put my name forward?
Yeah, I think, yeah. And, yeah, I'm saying, being you've qualified.
To get through the training.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could
Right then, just going back to your point, Councillor Fradgley, I've no issue with you proposing Councillor Orcott, but I'm not sure where you can propose yourself and councillors, because you're basically one person.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to be funny there. So, but you may be invited to come and speak to the, if that's okay, and if you can let your group know that you've got some expertise in certain areas that you would like to impart at that Housing Association working group.
Less than 5 members from the LP to reflect the cross-party nature of the oversight.
Yeah, and also if Councillor Orcock can't attend the Task and Finish working group, you could come as a substitute. Is that okay? Good, thank you for that. So we've got right, could you all put your hands up? Put your hands up who wants to be nominated. So we've got Councillor Orcott, Councillor Pascon, Councillor Wally Hoggins, Councillor Henry Seraphin. You in, David, or not?
I want to propose Councillor Fradgley, but I don't know why I can't.
Because she's only a substitute of the OS for the OSC. She's substituting for Councillor Orcock. Councillor Orcock has got the substantive post there.
So my way,
Councillor,
sorry, the maker.
I'll put my hand up. Go on, let's all be on it. Let's all be on it.
we've got
so we are looking.
I mean, like I said, it's
Yeah.
minimum, so you could expand it.
Yeah. We are looking for a minimum, so don't bite my head off yet, don't shoot the messenger. We're looking for a minimum of 3 Lib Dems, 1 independent, 1 Green and 1 Conservative. So we're looking for a minimum of 6.
Sorry. 2 Conservatives.
Oh, 2 Conservatives
or
now.
a League, 1 Conservative, 1 Green Party, 1 Independent.
Okay. So we're looking to try and do the political balance as well. So at the moment, we've got Councillor Orcott, Councillor Wally Hoggins, Councillor Partigan, Councillor Henry Seraphin, Councillor Johnston, Councillor Rolfe and Councillor Littlewood.
It's a group of 7, isn't it?
That's, did you mention your name?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've got 3 Lib Dems. 4 Lib Dems.
You did say minimum.
Councillor Ross.
Councillor Orcott.
4 and 3.
Oh, Alcott.
Peter,
Yeah.
Henry Seraphin as well.
And then we've got Councillor Littlewood, Conservative,
Yeah.
and Assingham and Wally Hoggins,
Yeah.
Independent and Green. So we, is that all right?
Well, come off it if you like. I've got enough to do.
So, right then, so assuming everybody is happy now, they put their hand up, and Councillor Orcott, and can we, and you will be happy to will you be the nominated substitute for Councillor Orcott? Councillor Jenny Fradgley, please. Will you be the nominated substitute? Come on, Councillor Rolfe.
Okay, so if Councillor Jenny Fradgley is the nominated substitute, Councillor Jenny Fraser might want to come along and speak at the meeting. Correct, okay.
You may want to invite her, but please can we do that next time?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, right. So
There's no nominated.
Yeah.
So we know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So we don't need nominations.
Yeah.
So the membership of the committee then is that.
Yep.
Do you want to read that?
Yeah, Mr. Perks will read out the membership.
Right. For the sake of completeness, then the membership of the committee that we're agreeing this morning, which is the agenda item, is Councillor Peter Hencher-Serapin, Councillor Kate Rolfe, Councillor Johnson and Councillor Alcock, with who's been nominated by Councillor Fradley as a substitute. We have Councillor Littlewood, Councillor Passingham and Councillor Wally Hoggins. They will comprise the Task and Finish group.
Yeah.
Terms of reference doesn't allow.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Fine. Also, cabinet members and other non-OSC members may be invited to meetings, just so that's clear. They won't have voting rights, but they will be invited to give us their pearls of wisdom and expertise on certain areas. So we're happy now? We've got 7. Do we need to vote? Will you be...
Just to get an agreed. Just happy with the list.
Yeah. Our members are happy with the list that Mr. Perks has read out?
Yeah.
Well, again, the first meeting will be decided, and then the scrutiny committee will then decide who's going to chair that meeting. Right. Thank you. That took a bit longer than I thought. Minutes of the climate change panel. To note the minutes of the meeting of the climate change panel held on the 6th of May 2025. Any comments on that? Are you just happy that we're only noting them anyway, so be happy with that?
Excuse me, Chair.
Yep. Right, so the next item on the agenda is the Cabinet meeting of the 2nd of June 2025, and we agreed that we would look at 5 different areas. The first area is the procurement of a multidisciplinary consultant, which is on, I think it's on page 75. No, it's not. Yes, it is. On page 75 of the Cabinet papers. Hopefully. Sorry. I was having to do it online. I was right. Right. Who says I make these figures up?
John's here to introduce, if that'd be helpful.
Mr. Carford, would you like to introduce this item for us, please?
Thank you, members. It's a fairly straightforward report. It's just to tie up the loose ends and, I suppose, tick the boxes without being too flippant about the process in respect of procuring for some multidisciplinary work on the South Warwickshire local plan. The leaders kindly kick-started that procurement process, but because our procurement rules and the Constitution, it rightly has to go to Cabinet just to be, as they signed off, and that's what this report is seeking to do. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Johnston, please. Kate, could you
I
turn your...
was
Kate,
surprised.
do a microphone. Thank you.
I was surprised that this item was picked for scrutiny because it seems to me relatively uncontroversial, and I'm not sure what we can really do with it. It's been agreed by our partner, other authority, and if we don't agree, I don't know what would happen.
Well, we don't have to agree, but we can still scrutinise.
No, I think there was a general blanket thing that the committee said it wanted to see all reports relating to the South Warwickshire local plan. I think in this instance, Councillor Johnson, you've got to the nub of the issue that there's probably little scrutiny to be done on this, but because you'd asked for it, we felt we should bring it to you. So,
yeah, so Councillor Wally Hoggins, please.
Yes, I note with interest that there's a good a good piece of this. It relates to climate change implications, climate change mitigation and enhancement. Can you tell me, please, exactly, it's all very well saying that it's all going to be sucked up as part of the budget anyway, but how much is this going to cost, please? How much are we willing to pay for this to be done? What is the exact amount of money that we're going to be setting aside for this within that budget, please?
We've put a budget aside, I think it's 300,000. That's 150k from both councils, and that's why it's come to Cabinet, because it's above the joint amount is above our procurement thresholds for officers. But what it's doing, it's a multifaceted piece of work. It's looking at concept master plans for the growth areas we're looking at, critiquing any information that's been submitted, helping us understand the infrastructure requirements, looking at deliverability of those sites. So it is a sort of integral piece of work. As I say, when we started going through the motions and realise the costs, that's why it's come through the Cabinet procedure.
Still don't understand the answer to that. So we've set aside a budget of 300,000. Is the 300,000 for the whole of the South Warwickshire development plan to be developed? And out of that budget, then, how much are we paying these people to do this? And is it a person or team, or are we putting it out to tender to an organisation to take this responsibility?
Yes, so that 300,000 is the budget for this piece of work, and it's going to consultants. So it'll be a consultant team undertaking that work. The budget for the South Warwickshire Local Plan, I mean, we allocated about 1.4 million for our proportion for it. So the local plan is a massive piece of work, and this is one key component of that.
Just to clarify, this piece of work is going to cost 300,000 in total and 150,000 from Stratford District Council residents, effectively.
Yes, that's our estimations.
And is that a maximum, John? Up to 150,000 each, and then if it
that's my understanding. That's the maximum. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I believe if it does need additional funding, another report will go to Cabinet.
I'd have to check the procurement legislation, but it's coming to Cabinet because it's above the procurement threshold. But this is within the South Warwickshire local plan, so it's not additional budget. This is work we were anticipating, or monies we need to spend to do the work. But as I say, because of the cost of this, it's gone above our procurement thresholds.
Yeah, and so it did come through as a leader's decision, and I was consulted on this as chair of OSC, so I'm aware of this. I'll come back to you in a minute, Councillor Huggins. So I think that was my understanding, that should it exceed a certain amount for both partners, it's like to come back with another report to explain the reasons why. And again, I think we've got that right to ask a scrutiny. Can I just ask a couple of quick questions whilst I've got the chair? What particular criteria as part of the tender is going to be evaluated, and how many, is this a specialist area? Are we likely to get many people? I know it's a different country, how long is a piece of tree? Are we likely to get many people to respond to this tender?
I'd hope so. It's not an unusual piece of work. Perhaps some of it in the past you might have tended separately. We're trying to do it as a single commission to sort of bring those skills together. So I'm confident we'll get a good mix of interest from organisations looking to do the work. Obviously, there isn't a company specification, and they'll be assessed based on the standards of price and quality and experience of their from their previous work in the field.
Let's ask who will be doing the tender assessment. I assume you've obviously got a group of senior officers on this.
Yes, there'll be officers across both councils that will do the assessment. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wally Huggins, do you want to come back?
Well, it is just a staggering amount of money, but also, would we not be looking at these, the climate change mitigation and enhancement opportunities for any development anyway? I don't understand why this has to be a separate piece of work. The South Warwickshire Local Plan has also been informed by work in relation to climate change, adaptation and mitigation, and this will continue informing the South Warwickshire Local Plan. It's a bit of an oxymoron, really, isn't it? We're going to build shed loads of houses and do our best to mitigate the environmental disaster that will actually be in itself. But as I said, I'm baffled why there needs to be a separate organisation looking at this and why this can't be handled in-house.
Mr. Perks, do you want to come back in, please?
Yeah, I think we're in danger of getting down a bit of a blind alley here. We have a duty as a district council to prepare a development plan that needs to meet a number of criteria. We need to produce evidence to justify those criteria because we have to pass an examination in public. If we don't have the evidence to support the plan when we get to the examination in public, which is what we're commissioning in here, the plan will fail, and that's got sort of quite serious consequences to us as a planning authority because it means we could lose the power to sort of control developments in our district. So what we're procuring here, it's a relatively straightforward report to procure the evidence that we need to support the plan. We're using a framework to sort of call it off the Crown Commercial Services framework, so we know that the expertise of the people to qualify for that framework is there. We will pick through this the best of that at the best value that we've got within the budget that the council allocated for preparing the local plan. So that's what the report is seeking to achieve, if that's useful to the committee.
Right, Councillor Johnston, please.
Our job, Chair, is simply to raise some questions for the Cabinet to consider. We're not here to take this decision. I think we just take it forward from Friday when we know what the comments being put forward are and add to them or take them away.
I think, you know, the questions about how many are likely to tender, who's evaluating the process, would there be, you know, if the costs exceeded the amount agreed, the 150,000 each, would there be additional report? You know, why is it being brought forward? Because it's a procurement framework. I think they're perfectly valid questions to be asking. And, you know, obviously we've had the answers, and I'm sure when this is discussed at Cabinet on Monday, those questions will be brought out anyway. It'll be part of the update from the portfolio holder or the officer, which Mr. Kevin or Mr. Perks or whoever. That will be, I think that's certainly questions should be asking, and I think we've asked them. Councillor Rolfe, please.
Is Councillor Passing, are you okay? Are you sure? It's okay. No, I was watching and slightly concerned. You're okay, are you? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rolfe. Our new Florence Nightingale, eh? Our new Florence Nightingale. No. That's the trouble sometimes when you do drink it. Very good. Very good. Sometimes you drink a glass of water and it makes you cough. So, no other questions on this item, are we? Yeah, come on. Can we have one meeting here, no, please? Yeah. Thank you very much. Right. The next item we're going to look at is the off-street parking order. I think that's page 209 of the... I think it's 209. Yeah, Mr. Perks, if you want to introduce that whilst I draw that back round.
Yes, it is on page 209, as you say, Chair. Within your approved budget framework, there is a general commitment sort of built into the budget to increase parking charges by sort of inflation every 2 years. We don't do it sort of every year because there's a cost associated with sort of signage sort of for doing it annually, but it was decided most recently that it should be done sort of every 2 years because that was a good balance between not putting the price up too much if you wait 4 years and not incurring unnecessary costs for changing signage and machines every 2 years, so every year. So that was felt to be the balance. The report that goes to Cabinet just seeks to sort of set out what the implications of that are, because we need charges in sort of sensible sort of figures. It doesn't seek to adjust the parking policy at this stage, but it does seek to sort of just adjust the figures in line with inflation. It also gives a commitment under paragraph 1.9 that the Cabinet are inclined to sort of seek a review of the Council's parking policy to make sure it's still fit for purpose and to make adjustments to reflect things that have happened since. So as part of this, when the report goes through, officers will start to sort of plan how we sort of do a parking policy, and we'll obviously look to engage scrutiny as that as part of the process. But at the moment, it's an inflationary rise in line with the commitments that the Council have already made within your budget.
Councillor Rolfe and Councillor Littlewood, please.
Yes, if I may. Can I have assurances from Cabinet that, that the review happens sooner rather than later, but more importantly, that the review takes place alongside County Council? Because whatever we do affects the charges that the County Council bring forward. And it's really important, particularly now, that we speak to each other.
So I assume you're asking for the feedback to Cabinet on Monday to ask that question?
Right, I'll ask it as Chair.
Yeah. Yep. Councillor Johnson. Yep.
You're saying that that would be part of the feedback we give from this committee to Cabinet.
Yeah.
It
So,
isn't just Councillor
we need to be asking that question.
Attendance at the Cabinet meeting.
Yeah. So, yeah, we need to be asking that question as part of the Scrutiny Committee.
Just about process. So I'm not talking to Chair of the District Council. I'm asking, as a member of this committee, will this committee take it forward from your point of view, that you will ask that question?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, that's the clarification I was seeking.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Littlewood? And then Councillor Warner.
Thank you. Chair, just can we look at the detail of the parking charges? Is that part of the remit for this session? Because if so,
yeah, I think
I heard what Mr. Perks said about it being the uplift being within inflation, but there's a variety of increases. If we look at town centre, the uplift is between 7.7% and 5.3%. But if I go and have a look at Shipston, which is a town in the south of Warwickshire, quite rural and has a need to encourage people into the town centre for shopping purposes, to keep the small retailers working, I noticed that there's a 33% increase for a 1 hour parking and 20% for a 2 hour parking. So that's not inflationary, and it seems disproportionate to other car parks within Stratford. It seems to be a little bit biased towards reducing the percentage increase in Stratford. And there must be a reason for that, and I'd be interested to hear it.
Yeah, I think the reason for that, if you look back to the charge at 2013, it was 20 pence, and it's difficult to put it up a percentage of 20 pence. It needs to go up in 10 pence intervals. So since 2013, which is 12 years ago, it's doubled effectively, hasn't it? It's gone up to sort of 40 pence. If the committee feel they would like to make representation of the Cabinet that that's excessive, then I think that would be within your gift.
Thank you. Well, I accept that. I mean, in fact, it was 2 years ago when it went up from 20 pence. I don't argue about that, and it is a small charge, and I don't think anybody will be worried about it. But it does seem to be a little disproportionate. That's all, and people will ask the question. Shouldn't we really have a unified approach to car parking throughout the district, really?
A couple of things. I'll bring Councillor Wally-Hoggins in next. Councillor Curtis has indicated to come up, and it's in the finance portfolio. Welcome to please come and join us, Councillor Curtis. So you might be able to have some more details to the questions after Mr. Perks. But if you want to, if I bring Councillor Wally-Hoggins in, do her question, answer to that other question potentially from Mr. Perks or Councillor Curtis, Then we'll carry on for that. So if you want to do your question, Councillor Huggins, and then we'll...
I'm actually questioning the need to actually do this because the budgets, we know, are quite healthy across the district at the moment. You know, the High Street in Stratford is dying on its feet. Carluccio's is another casualty that's coming our way. And, you know, really, for this is a rural district, and for many residents, they don't have the choice of catching a bus. They have to drive a motor vehicle into town and park it in order to shop in Stratford. I think that I'm very disappointed that this has been brought here. I think it could have been. We could have been kind to both the businesses to attract people coming in, and to our residents, and said we don't need to do this at this particular point in time. You know, if you wanted to make the savings, then don't have all the green projects that you've got, including the 1.2 million hydroelectric scheme. Thank you.
Right, so, right, before we move on, we're at 12:56 and the meeting's nearly lasted 3 hours. I know time flies when you're having fun. Can I propose that we continue, we've got a couple of smaller items on this to finish off. Are you willing to indulge that we carry on for past the 3 hours until we complete the agenda? I'm proposing that. Agreed. So, Councillor Keithy, I'm afraid you've lost the vote on this occasion, but your point is noted, and I will be feeding that back to Cabinet on Monday. Thank you for that, and thank you for indulging us on this occasion. Mr. Perks, do you want to come in, and then we'll bring Councillor Curtis in?
Yeah, I'll pick up those two questions. Councillor Curtis may wish to comment more on the second, it's more a political matter than one I can comment on as an officer. In terms of the universal approach to parking that Councillor Littlewood raised, generally we only charge for parking in Stratford Town Centre. The one exception to that is Telegraph Street in Shipston, and the reason that we brought in parking charges there was at the request of the Town Council in Shipston, because of all the car parks in Shipston, they were all full of sort of residents and there was no availability for people to shop. So that was the reason that we brought a charge in there. We've kept it at a very nominal charge because it's really just designed to make sure that the Telegraph Street car park is available to support the High Street in Shipston. The fact that the charge is very small makes sort of changing it difficult, so that's why that one's slightly at odds. But the other out of centre car parks like Bidford, Henley, Ulster, we don't charge in, and that policy has remained. But Shipston, there's one car park in Shipston we changed, so that is always a bit of an anomaly. In terms of whether we need to do this, the parking budget is currently sort of underachieving against its target, so this would bring it closer to where your budgeted income is. Matters of how you allocate the budget are really for the Cabinet to decide, so I'll leave that for Councillor Curtis to comment if he sees fit, or that can be feedback that the committee want to give to the Cabinet if that's the general view of everybody here.
Anything to add, Councillor Curtis?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just really to go back over the process. I mean, obviously, you know, it's important that this committee does carry out its functions properly. But as part of the budget setting process, there have been extensive reviews throughout the period. There were the budget review panel meetings in November. There was a task and finish group from this committee which met on January the 14th, 21st and 29th this year. That of which, if my memory is correct, Councillor Littlewood was part of that overview and scrutiny committee. That committee then reported back, or that subcommittee reported back to overview and scrutiny, I think it was February the 7th. So there has been, all I would say is there has been adequate time during the budget process to comment on these charges. So it seems, I'm slightly surprised that as all that information has been in the public domain for the last 8 months, or certainly five months, sorry, that it's now appears to be such a problem. Thank you.
Councillor Wiley-Hoggins then, please. Yeah.
I'm slightly surprised that you can say that, Councillor Curtis, because yes, it may be all very well to say that the council's had this to review, but also the things that have also happened to the public regarding, you know, central government budgeting and cuts and so forth. You know, inflation's going up for them as well. You know, this is within your kindness as a council to not do this, to listen to your residents who face a battering, particularly our elderly and more vulnerable residents who need to travel into town. I think, you know, that really, telling us that we've had adequate time to do that, that's fine, but you've also been very... I'm sorry, somebody's actually speaking while I'm speaking. Other people have been you've been keenly aware of what's going on across the country and across this district that is affecting the finances of your residents. And I'm, honestly, I'll say this, I'm very disappointed in this council for doing this.
Thank you.
And I'm upset about it. Thank you.
Councillor Curtis,
And that is, I'll just pick up that point very briefly. The budget process has to start when it has to start in order to be for the council to sign off the budget in February. That process can't be delayed. But regarding Councillor Wally-Hoggins' point about cost of living crisis, yes, we're well aware of the cost of living crisis that was foisted on residents by the previous government, which is why we have a £250,000 cost of living crisis fund that residents can apply to. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just any... Before you go, Councillor Curtis, don't go. You might as well stay. Yeah. As they say, misery loves company. So let's stay here. I think I've got a couple of points that I welcome the wider review with the county council, particularly park and ride and on and off street parking interlinked. And as Councillor Rolfe mentioned that they are interlinked, and I think that is done, and if that can be done as a matter of urgency, and again, if that can come back to scrutiny to see how we can add or come up with suggestions to the process. Sometimes it can be a critical friend, and sometimes we can be friendly as well. So we're not always critical. So I think that would be helpful. It would be interesting to see whether there is any more up-to-date feedback coming from businesses and BID as well, to say, well, since January, February, things have moved on a little bit. Is there anything you could do to tinker with different things? So whether that could be added into the process to see if there's any up-to-date community intelligence on that, that would be helpful. But again, I can understand sometimes you have to draw a line in the sand, and then you just have to make those decisions, because if you keep on changing it and changing it, you won't come to a decision. So I think that's something to consider. And the only other one that I knew in the past there was problems with was season tickets. I don't think they are at the level that they were prior to COVID. So has that been taken, the cost-benefit analysis of increasing it by X is compensated by a reduction of Y in terms of people buying them. So it's just like a cost-benefit analysis. So just whether that's been taken into account and how you're going to take into account community intelligence. It's not a criticism, it's just whether these questions have been asked. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I think one of the genuine difficulties about assessing the income level from car parking is that there are so many variables involved. If we have a wet Easter weekend, the car parking revenue plummets. If you have a growth, so it's a bit like in my previous job when I was selling sort of orchestral concerts. There are so many variables in why you might get a sellout or you might get a very poor attendance. It is very difficult to gauge exactly the reasons lying behind. But I think to your point of greater collaboration and working with county council, I think that is well made. This was discussed at Cabinet Forum last week, and there is a recognition that we do need a much more joined up approach with county to, just to look at the park and ride, the on-street parking, the off-street parking. Unfortunately, there isn't time to do that before this review, but it is something that I would hope we will be able to take forward. That will very much depend on the new regime at the collaboration we get from the new regime at the County Council, obviously. But it's something we are mindful of and that we should be taking forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Anne. I appreciate this is a difficult one to do. I used to do that in a previous life, and with a budget of £300+ million, 10% variation is £300,000, which is a significant sum. Yeah. Whereas if it was a 10% variation on a £1,000 budget, it's not so relevant. So I know you have to get your crystal ball out on occasion and do your Michael Fish impression as well. So I do appreciate that. But hopefully you're seeing that we're trying to be constructive with our questions, and that again some points to consider, particularly around the County Council, but also potentially liaising with BID and local businesses as well on their views, whether they might say some sort of tinkering to the prices might be beneficial and help the economy of the town. So I think it is important. So hopefully members are happy with that. Thank you. Thank you. Next item we're going to talk about is the solar panels for Studley and Southam. Who's going to be leading that? Mr. Perks, thank you.
This report sets out a proposal that's going to Cabinet that we fund the installation of photovoltaic arrays on the Southam and Shipston leisure centres from the Climate Change Fund. The committee might recall that we've already recently installed photovoltaic arrays on the Stratford and Shipston leisure centres. We managed to fund that out of the swimming pools fund. So we got sort of a significant amount of government funding towards that. Those installations have been very successful. So the proposal is that we would carry out a similar installation using the same system that we used on those two leisure centres on the leisure centres at Studley and Southam, such that all of the leisure centres that in our suite that have got suitable roofs for putting them on, we have an issue with the roof at Ulster, which is why we're not proposing doing that one at this time, would have photovoltaic systems on them. This is slightly different from the ones that we did at Stratford and Shipston in that we haven't got government funding for this, so we'll be funding it ourselves. But because of that, it will generate a revenue. We get to keep the electrical sort of revenue saving for it, or 80% of it. We're splitting that with everyone active who are the operators of the site because we need their cooperation. So whilst we will be spending some of the capital out of the Climate Change Fund, we will get a revenue stream sort of coming from this. So the report has 4 recommendations: that the proposals to install the photovoltaics is endorsed, that the funding is released, which will be in the region of 400,000 from the Climate Change Fund. It gives authority, in line with what we discussed earlier, to commence the procurement, and an exemption to sort of allow Leisure Energy to be appointed to do this, who are the firm that installed the installations at Stratford and Shipston, so that we have consistency. And then finally, just a technical recommendation to allow us to sort of sign contracts and get things moving, so that hopefully we can get these installations done quickly and get the sort of benefits they provide. Happy to take any questions.
I'll let members come in with their questions before I come up with mine. Councillor Littlewood, please.
Thank you. First of all, let me say I think it's a great idea to be looking at projects like this for obviously green credentials, and it's worthwhile doing it from that basis, but also investing to make money for, as it were, that can be used elsewhere. As I understand it, based on net present value, this is a 27-year break-even in effect, and that equates return on investment of 3.75% per annum on the capital employed. How does that really compare in terms of the other Treasury investment expectations that we're receiving on such sizes of money?
I have to report back to you on the exact figures. I don't believe we're getting a lot more than 3.75 on it, but I'd like to check that out with the 151 officer before giving you an answer on that, but I can get back to you on that.
So if I may just follow up on that, thank you for that, and I didn't really expect a number straight off, but really has that comparison been part of the project proposal that looking at the value for money of the capital employed? And I'm sure it must have been, but it would be nice to see evidence of that argument or discussion.
The return on the capital has been considered. I'll be honest, it wasn't a main driver for the project, because we've got a commitment under the council's council plan to reduce our CO2 emissions, and it was driven primarily that this is now we've sort of looked at the waste vehicles, the largest emitters of CO2, so we were looking at ways to reduce that at the most economical way, rather than looking at the best way of getting a return from interest. It's two sort of sides of the same coin, but to be honest, the green drivers were higher than the financial drivers in this, but yet we were looking for economic prudence, so we're about 3.75.
Yep. I've been doing my homework, so I'll come in and do some questions. Some of us in the vein to Councillor Littlewood. Be interesting to know the life of the PV panels. Also, what alternatives did we look at to reduce our carbon emissions, such as heat pumps or turbines? Again, just questions, and why they were discounted and why this was the preferable option. And I know we looked in the report, and I think that's lessons were learnt from the Stratford installation, that we're going to get 80% of the revenue savings back to the back to ourselves, £15,000 to £16,000 a year. How was the 80% figure calculated, decided upon? Obviously, there's got to be something in for the contractor who's running our leisure centres as well. Just some thoughts around those, please, Mr. Pokes.
Right, taking those in order, the photovoltaics are solid-state glass-backed panels, and I believe the design life of those is around about 50 years, so that should be in excess of the payback period. In terms of how we came up with this as a proposal, we commissioned, we did an analysis of our carbon emissions generally. Waste vehicles were the highest emitters, followed by leisure centres, so we commissioned a firm called Leisure Energy to look at our leisure centres and sort of come up with a hierarchy of proposals as to what we should do. They did look at heat pumps and alternative power generation, and the report found that heat pumps are something that we should look at, but they tend to be electrically powered, so the biggest carbon savings were made by generating the electricity clean in the first place, because that can ultimately feed the heat pumps moving forward. So this was a rational first step on a programme to decarbonisation. It won't decarbonise the leisure centres, and you'd need a series of heat pumps to do that, but it made more sense to put the PVs up before you put the heat pumps in. And moving on to the revenue point, you're right. At the moment, the electricity purchase is done by the contractor who's got a long-term contract for operating our leisure centres. We needed to incentivise them to buy our electricity, so they needed to sort of see some benefit from that, and the 80-20 split was secured through negotiation, which was felt a fair deal for both parties.
Thank you. That's very helpful, particularly about the life of the PV panels, so that's really informative, so thank you. Councillor Wally-Hoggins, please.
Yes, could you tell me, please, as it's all to do with climate mitigation, can you tell me, please, where the solar panels were manufactured?
I would have to get back to you on that, because I don't know which particular brand they're fitting, so it would be part of the procurement.
Yeah, it's the country of origin, really, and how they arrive in this country. Thank you.
Any other questions on the solar panels? I think we've just had a quite illuminating debate on that one. Come on, here's the first one. So thank you for that one. The next one we're going to look at is the Strategic Risk Register on page 41. Yeah, if we'd only done them in numerical order, rather than like the government in alphabetical or whatever. So that'd be good.
Okay, this is a standard report that comes as part of our sort of risk management agenda as a district council. David, the Chief Executive, sort of leads on this rather than me, but I'm happy to sort of take questions. We do a quarterly review of the risk register, and periodically we bring it back to Cabinet to make sure that we're sort of appraising and sort of managing our risks. This is the latest sort of update to the risk register, where the scores have been reviewed and the risks of the council set out, which you will see in the appendix. I'm happy to take any questions.
Come on, who's done their homework now? Any questions on this item of the agenda? Or has it got to be back to the chair again? Obviously, the biggest one is the local government reorganisation, which obviously page 49. I don't think there's too much to say about that. I do notice when all our risk at the moment, unless I'm going colourblind, so I do apologise, my sight isn't getting any better, most of the risks are tending to be amber. And some of the, when you just look at them from the figure, the risk level of 6 compared to the risk of being amber of 6 compared to the risk level of 12, that's obviously 50% of the what we're looking at. Anything you want to point out in particular that you've got any direction of travel that might be getting worse, or are we pretty stable as we're speaking at the moment?
There's nothing particularly alarming coming out of it. It was when we ran through them, it was a sort of general update. We don't tend to sort of bother the Cabinet with sort of green levels of risk, because it's obviously not a risk. What we're looking to show is sort of big things and how we're sort of mitigating them. Hence, things that tend to be sort of more amber. We're seeking that there are no reds in the report, so we feel that we have got sensible sort of mitigation in place, with the exception possibly of staff retention, which is just creeping into the red at item 3, I've noticed. Yep. So, no, cyber security is obviously something that is very much on our mind at the moment in terms of risk, and making sure that we're a viable organisation with local government reorganisation going forward, that we can retain staff, provide the services that are needed. So those are probably the two biggest risks that are keeping us awake at the moment.
I would assume that other committees of the council, particularly employment committee, are looking at items such as staff retention. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Huggins, please.
Yes, I am concerned about the risk level in the higher category of 12 for the inability to contact key staff in an emergency, lack of resource resilience in the event of absence, and process for managing an emergency fail. I think that what we've all seen recently with some of our larger retailers is that has been, the catastrophe is that in Europe, the immobilisation of traffic lights, telephone communications, all of that very much depends on electricity supply and so forth, especially now that our telephones are now all digitally in this area, or digital rather than any electricity supply to landlines. I wonder what is the council doing to mitigate? How are you going to communicate with members of staff?
In the event of a complete electrical failure?
If you look at I'm looking at page 53.
The council are part of the South Warwickshire Resilience Network that sort of set out emergency planning at a national level for those types of, so there are provisions in place for doing that. But if we lost electricity as a council, it would have a significant effect on our ability to communicate, and we would sort of be working to sort of national emergency procedures in that instance.
Just a follow-up question to that. Having just travelled from the far north of Scotland, it is very noticeable that reservoirs are very, very low already. And by that, I mean at a catastrophic level, I would have said, really, barely paddling pools themselves, some of them. And I do think, are we making any contingency arrangements as a council as to how we support residents, under the circumstances of, water supply being shut down for periods of time in order to preserve amounts? What's happened in the past, I believe, is that water's been turned on for periods of time during the day and then switched back off. I think this is something that, as it's only May, that we do need to be looking at. I'm assuming that you've already been contacted about this and as to what might be happening moving forward. Thank you.
Yes, as I say, we're part of the Coventry, Solihull and Warwickshire Resilience Network who would consider those issues and we would implement those protocols. We haven't been sort of given anything as yet that we need to be implementing, but they will be discussing that, I'm sure.
Thank you for that. Any other questions on that? And the last one from the Cabinet Papers is the Q4 Year-End Performance Monitoring Report 24-25, page 9 of the Cabinet Papers. Simon's here. Well done, Simon. We'll do what Simon said, won't we? Simon, will you just a brief introduction, please? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, this is the normal report that we do every year. This is to cover the final quarter of 24-25 and also the end of year results. There were 66 actions in the plan, of which 3 of the tasks actually were covered by 11 actions, so it made a total number of actions of 58. Overall, at the end of 24-25, the final summary of actions was thus: 79% were achieved, 7% partially achieved, 7% were ongoing, 5% were not achieved by the target deadlines, and 1 task turned out to be not applicable. And in terms of not achieved, the 3 that were playing pitch strategy, the the Stratford District Strategic Partnership, that was subsequently deleted anyway, and the electric vehicle charging point strategy, that didn't happen. I'll move on to the key performance indicators as well. There are 23 that we monitor. 62% made their target, of which 8 didn't, and obviously they're shown in the report with the resultant reasons why as well. So it's just over to the floor now for comment, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Simon. Any questions on this? I've got a few, but if somebody else wants to come in, Councillor Wally Hoggins, please.
Yeah, I do wonder if we need to look very critically at the units of B&B in use as temporary accommodation, because throughout 2024-25 we've exceeded the target for that. In Q2, obviously we've well exceeded what we wanted to do for that. I think that's something that we take forward as a housing group as well. It's disappointing but unsurprising that we've got that pinch point there, and what can we do as a council to rectify that, really. It's an observation really as to perhaps for that should feed into our work programme as well.
Yeah,
in terms of that, yes, that is an area of concern, Councillor Wally Hoggins. In terms of actions that we have addressing that, we have One Evesham Place, which we purchased, which we've now got the design approved for, so that will hopefully be on site over the summer, which will give us another sort of 6 units, single-person units of accommodation. We've also got in the last budget an allocation of money to buy some further temporary units that we can use to sort of try and ease that situation, but there is a constant pressure on housing. You're right, it's a constant risk.
Yeah, there was a couple I've got. The access to service at the playing pitch and the EV charging strategy. It just, again, sort of like some timescale around though. I know that playing fields, playing pitches, etc., over the number of years have been gradually reduced, particularly in certain areas. Obviously, outdoor sport, outdoor activities, recreational activities are good for many reasons, including obesity, mental health, getting people away from machines, etc. I just wondered when that's going to come to fruition, because I think it's an important area that, you know, as a district council, we've always had leisure facilities as part of our brand. So I think it is important that we do stand up for these areas and try and promote as many as possible.
Okay, picking up those 2 points in turn. The playing pitch strategy is really a supporting document that underpins our sort of planning policies. So we're keen to align that with the progress of the South Warwickshire local plan, because what we don't want is to commit their relatively expensive documents to commission, sort of picking up the points that were raised earlier. And we don't want to sort of have a playing pitch strategy that's out of date by the time the local plan goes to examination. So that's a question of timing. That'll be picked up in the not too distant future as a result of that. In terms of electric vehicle charging, we aren't as far on with that as we would hope to have been. That's largely down to my capacity to sort of bring it forward. We are working with Warwick District Council to try and do sort of like a joint South Warwickshire initiative on that. And we've recently made some progress that we're looking at a leasing model where we would bring in one of the market's developed to the point now that there are half a dozen established providers. We'll be looking to work with one of those on a leasing model to bring forward a solution where the electricity allows, and I'm hoping to bring a report through to the Cabinet on that probably at the end of the summer. So we are making some progress, but apologies, not quite as much as we'd hoped.
Mr. Wall-Huggins, please.
And finally, the number of sick days per full-time employee, if we look at that on page 40, for the first time for a long time, it is showing an upward trajectory, consistently an upward trajectory there, which I'm wondering if there's anything that we can do to sort of help that to, what's the reasoning behind that really, and what we need to do to support employees.
Yeah, I don't have a detailed answer with that with me today, but I can take that away and we can look at that.
Councillor Littlewood, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at page 33 of the report. The item is percentage of home choice plus applications assessed within the working day, 10 working day target. The target being 75% of those within 10 days. The quarter 4, i.e. up to April of this year, performance was only 16%, which was substantially down on the lower than target performance for the year of 43%. That's quite concerning, that it's getting worse rather than better. Or am I misreading the statistics? I wonder if you could clarify, please.
Yeah, Home Choice Plus has been a concern for us for a while. As a management team, we have a paper coming to us at our next meeting sort of about how we can sort of fundamentally address that. It's a combination of factors, that availability of resource, the software that we're using, possibly some sort of unrealistic demand that, and some historic sort of data that needs clearing out. But we have asked for a deep dive on that as a management team. We've picked that up as an issue, so I'm hoping that will improve. In terms of, I'm surprised at that 16% figure, so I'll check the detail of that and get back to you. I was expecting it to be more around the 43%, which is the year-end figure, which we were looking at. So whether there was a particular blip last quarter, I will need to check that.
It may be a typographical error, but I hope it is.
Could be 61, couldn't it, if we're lucky? Yeah, and I noticed, touched on that, Mr. Perks, there was going to be a report to Cabinet in May. Obviously, we didn't have a May Cabinet, so it will be at the earliest opportunity.
Yeah.
Yep, that'll be good, because I think that, yeah, it just needs to be looked at. So that was one of the points I'd picked up. As well, one of the KPIs to do with waste, which, you know, I think we are doing particularly well still, especially compared to the rest of the other district and waste collection authorities. There's been some new initiatives being brought in. Hopefully they will be helping increase the recycling rate as well. So I think we have to have a watching brief on those and see how they're doing. Again, if we can still publicise those as well, because I think there is still some confusion. You know, in Satham on a Friday, on a Thursday night, we have our bins collected on a Friday. We still have the bin monitor who puts the bins out, and then other people follow which ones are coming out. But then who puts what in which bin is also quite confusing at times. So again, if we can put that message out, but I think it's good that we're extending this. The percentage of invoices being paid within 28 days, 91.54%. In the report, it says the expectation it will be much closer after some training and some computer upgrades. It'd be quite good, because I think our target was 99% off the top of my head. How big of expectation it will be more closer, and how much closer can we get it? It's well, I can understand what they're saying, but it seems to be slightly vague on that one.
Hang on, I can tell you. The performance figures, this is as of year end, so 1st of April. The first performance this year was much closer to 99. I was just looking it up now, but it's significant improvement already on that. So that seems to be improving going forward.
Any other one? I've got one more. Councillor Keithy, well done. Good man.
Only a quick one, just following up Councillor Wally Hoggins's question about sickness, actually. Simon, just to ask you, sometimes long-term sick affects the way in which we look at these figures, and although the rolling annual average seems to be still falling, Councillor Wally Hoggins has pointed out that if you look on the bar chart on the numbers per quarter, they're rising. Is there some way of showing us whether or not we've got long-term sick cases under control in case that's affecting these results?
Yes, Councillor Keithy, I can confirm actually those sick days exclude long-term sick. Okay.
I've got one final point, if nobody else has got any more points. Again, sometimes, again, it's reviewing our targets, how achievable they are, because there's no point setting a target that we've got no chance of achieving. You know, we're setting ourselves up to fail. I think the percentages of the NNDR collected and the percentage of council tax grants is pretty impressive. And again, it'll be interesting to see how we review those targets, especially we know times are challenging, and you know, we've all spoke about the cost of living issue at the moment. So again, my question is, we do need to make sure we are setting targets that are realistic and achievable. Challenging, yes, I appreciate that, but again, we don't want to be in a position where we're setting ourselves up to fail and potentially putting undue pressure and affecting morale of staff as well. So I think that's one point I would like to make. I don't know if anybody else has got any more points on that, or Simon, how just some assessment of how targets are set, you know, how much negotiations are done with the heads of services and etc.
Yeah, as obviously you know, the performance management framework was sorted a couple of months ago, obviously with the management team setting it, and then it's gone through OSC and Cabinet, so everyone's had their full sort of consultation on it. So hopefully things will even be better next year.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Yeah, obviously we'll get quarterly updates, don't we? So we'll be able to review on the situation as well. Right. That's that item on the agenda sorted out. Any another 7 to go now? Go on, who's paying attention? There's only 2 more. The work plan. Have we any more updates we want to consider on the work plan and Cabinet forward plan? Councillor Johnson, you're normally quite good on this one.
Could I just thank whoever has managed to get the NHS Trust here for our next meeting. Congratulations.
You're welcome.
Well, I don't know. I think the phrase herding cats sometimes springs to mind, so well done, Mr. Allison, on that one. So thank you. I think we've covered that one. Item 12, I've got no urgent business. So I will now declare this meeting at 1:33 closed. Thank you.